All right,
All
so,
right.
and Kendra Wilkes just joined us. Kendra, we're not seeing your video yet. Sometimes on a mobile device, that's a little easier. Okay, so exit for videoing. Kendra, if you can hear me, we do not have your video feed right now. There you go.
All right.
Thank you. And we do have quorum without you, so don't feel bad if it drops out. Cool.
All right. It is 6:31. Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda are the minutes from our meeting on June 26th. Does anyone have changes that they would like to see in the minutes from June 26th? All right, as chair, I accept the minutes as accurate. And now we move to Red Tail Ridge Phase 1 Plan Design Policy Issues PC 2628,23-123. Before we begin on these, because I've noticed that we have quite a few new faces joining us. Public comments at these meetings are at the discretion of the chair. I intend to recognize members of the public who have things that they would like to say about agenda items when those agenda items are up for consideration. So please, if you have public comments for this item, now is the appropriate time to make those. And if you have public comments about other agenda items, we will discuss those when those agenda items are up for consideration. Thank you. Actually, Sean, if you want to get this one started, since I believe.
Sure. So we have Chad Wubbin here, Carrie Wubbin, visitor on the Zoom call, and Wade Wise of Wiser Engineering here to talk about the plans. Robert, are you here also for Wiser Engineering?
I'm actually attorneys, and I represent also West Madison.
Okay.
Or the developer for
Developer.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is West Madison.
So that's our group, as far as I can tell, of interested parties that would want to make public comments and or participate with Q&A kinds of stuff. We have some bullet points that I just pulled out of the memo that Wade had prepared for us. The plans as marked up are in the agenda packets, so we can pop to any of those drawings at any time. And for the most part, I would qualify this as giving design guidance to Wiser Engineering for edits for final design, the intention of bringing them back for design approval of the plans, the plat, and the city developer agreement, if we can, to the August 14th meeting. Also at that meeting, on an unrelated topic, we have a very similar slate of things we're working on with Bell Farm. So that's going to be a pretty heavy agenda. Budget, not to forget 4 budgets. So anyway, that's the preface. And maybe we could just go through these one at a time, might be most efficient. So the first issue is potential raised crosswalk at intersections. Let me try to bring up separately.
I think drawing 03 shows them things.
Yeah, so
Page 8 up.
So the intersection of High Road and Bellefontaine, just across the street to the west is Misty Valley, of course, the existing subdivision. And it's designed to be a bike path along the east side of High Road. When it gets built is a separate question, so we'll just put a pin in that for right now, but that this would be built as a raised crosswalk. And when I say raised, I mean 3 inches above normal pavement elevation with 6-foot wide tapers down to 0 on either side of it. So anyone coming around the corner would ramp up, have a bit of a plateau, then ramp down. Right? Anyone driving straight through would see it more as a traditional speed hump kind of thing. So that would be one instance where this has been designed in. Another one just further east, Bellefontaine at the first north-south street, Waxman Way, where that path would also then be raised. And over at far east side of this first phase plat, Bellefontaine at Ruff Road, where this is the edge of plat line right now. There would be a raised crosswalk there. And one of the open questions is about a sidewalk that's coming down from lot 4. And I'm perfectly happy to jump over to more of an overall view of this because I realize looking at it intersection by intersection can be difficult. So one of the questions is, do we want a crosswalk here too? In fact, let me back up. If that fits better. Okay. So that would be this bigger multifamily development would have a sidewalk connection down to the street. And currently the crosswalks just on this side of the street. If that makes sense. The last intersection we were just looking at. The first one is over along the East South High Road and along the south side of Bellefontaine at Waxman. So
I like having the idea of an additional one, or the idea of having additional ones on Bellefontaine. As I see them as also, like, in addition to being pedestrian and bike safety enhancements, they will also act as speed bumps for people coming to cross traffic, commuters coming from up north.
now, when you say additional, what is that?
You were just saying putting one across Bellefontaine Boulevard to the east eventually. No,
And maybe here?
yeah,
That one.
that one. I like the ones you've already laid out, but I also like the idea of having an additional one somewhere along Bellefontaine Boulevard just to slow down the traffic in addition to promoting safety.
Okay, so to try to add one there, yeah. That gets
In the
into a few other
future.
issues.
Yeah,
from
that's
a
in the
design
future because there's no traffic, there's no commuter traffic right now, so.
Right. Yeah, so let's talk about that too, is when to build that. But part of what I was wondering too, related to all of this, is this crosswalk on the, I'm gonna call it southwest quadrant of that intersection. We normally at a T intersection don't put 2 crosswalks in right next to each other like that. Normally that's sort of a 4-leg intersection thing that we do. And it feels to me like this one lines up better than this one does. It's not to say we can't put them both in, we just normally don't.
Is there going to be a pathway down from that apartment area?
This
To
will be a
Bellefontaine?
sidewalk.
Will it be a
Yes.
sidewalk? I mean,
Yes.
okay,
Now or future?
Well, that's a good question. I think the intention was to have it done now because this lot will be developed now.
Is it?
The request as one of those bullet items is, could we put it off to the future? Because I think the other half of this easement wants to come from that next open area. And so this is only right now proposed as a 5-foot wide easement, not a 10-foot wide easement.
Yeah, so we would take your comments or recommendation there. We understand the desire for it to happen now. We saved the room that it physically could be constructed, but not public sidewalk in a 10-foot easement. Because we're trying not to lose a unit there, but if it is mandatory and it has to happen now, we likely could work with that landowner or acquire the additional 5 feet for the easement to make it happen.
Oh, sort of as bigger picture items, maybe. Maybe back. Okay, so this is 5 feet wide. And so you're saying, Wade, you could just put some sort of easement over here for now, because it's.
Yeah, I mean,
an easement in the
yes.
future.
The developer is the landowner there as well, so they control that land. So yes, and especially if we're talking about consideration for that crossing there. You know, this would all go together.
Yeah, it does seem like if it's gonna get built sooner or later, getting the storm sewer in the right place, getting the grades in the right place. Just feels like
Getting
it's
the sidewalk
easier now
down, yeah.
than later. But I'll take guidance from the committee on that.
Speak to that, like, yeah, and we're looking for guidance, but I just want to put something in as we ask you these questions is, we're out of time. The asphalt plants are going to, just to reconstruct how this is going to go, the asphalt plants are going to close in the 3rd week of November. That means we have to have all of our infrastructure, sewer and water and everything in before they close so we can pave the roads. And if we work it all the way back, we're out of time. We need approval now. And our plat's been delayed twice now, waiting to get through this process here. And if we don't make it on this current schedule, we're gonna lose 5 months. It would be, we could basically move this all to May, because we won't be able to do any lots or sales or anything all through the winter. So as you contemplate these and give us guidance, we're looking for, like, for us, whether you put that crosswalk in to the north or you do the one to the south, either one is fine. We think it should be for putting it in. You want it in now, that's fine. The other issue you brought up that wasn't answered, the PED committee is going to want raised blocks. They're going to be, so we don't care if they're raised or not. We would prefer that the 2 committees just decide together and because we need, like, our directions that we need are, we need to come back for final approval at the next one, final recommendation at the next one. So we're kind of looking, when you think about these, for the strong direction, not, like, okay, now we've redrawn it and, oh, I don't like that anymore, because that will cause us 6 months. So we just ask, when you look at this, you talk it through, that you give us clear directions on what you want for it, so that we can make the schedule and still get all of our improvements in and get our approval on the plat in time, so we can put the roads in this year.
I think that's our intent tonight, isn't it?
Well, I think the intent is right, that you give guidance of what you want to see in the design so that when it gets drawn and reviewed, it's approvable. Whether you approve it or not, I cannot ask you to make a future promise. Similarly, given my schedule, I can't promise that if everything gets done and turned in, I'll be ready for the next agenda. I'm trying, but I'm trying in a lot of different directions all at once. And I want to be upfront and honest about that. That despite my best efforts, I can't make that promise. I'm just willing to try.
What is this prelim? What is what this that sign? This is final design?
This is near final design. Yeah. So we're well past preliminary design. And
with all due respect, I'm trying to understand that a little bit, because we're really now into the nitty gritty. Like, our plat's being held up in a sense because we have to get through it and it's all important. But at the end of the day, it starts becoming like, okay, is it a raised sidewalk or is it not? Like, I'm not quite sure why we can't get, and this is maybe an issue to also talk to the city and the council, but like, we all agree where the roads are going to go. I mean, we all agree, we're going to agree on everything substantively, whether it's up or down, the car, it's a raised sidewalk or not, whether the path goes here or not. Like, and so it seems as if we're going to potentially lose the whole winter, for things that are, I don't understand why it can't be a recommendation with a recommendation that the details on the engineering details, the drawings, just be approved by you. Like what's the committee going to look at once it's drawn? I mean, you'll see, like, you would confirm, yes, it's raised, or yes, it meets the grading, or yes, it meets that, but do we have to come back, even if you're not through it by next meeting? Like, why would we have to come back again just to have you say, yes, it does meet those. You know, we're not gonna change anything. You know, they're gonna tell us, this is what it looks like. We just, you and Wade have, I would never be able to look at it and say, I don't know what a K value is. You know, you two would just confirm it. So I guess I'm just trying to say that we would like to get like exactly what the committee wants, and then just have you two confirm it. Even if you don't have it confirmed by the next meeting, we'd like to be able to get our recommendation for the council, you know, because like, they're not gonna double check the engineering, or I don't think they will.
Well, let me just pause this.
Yep.
Right? The committee's practice has long been that they approve plans, the plat and the agreement all together because they're all interrelated,
Correct.
right? If one changes, the others change. So it becomes a question of, at the end of the day, after it's been reviewed, what's left? If it's a handful of little things that are highly technical, the committee has been open to approval contingent upon satisfaction of the city engineer with mop-up. right?
Yep, that's what I'm.
If there are significant things left, it has been the practice of the committee to say this is not yet approved.
Yeah, and
Because conditional approvals are sort of not our thing historically.
yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that what we're looking for, but I mean, because it's super, I mean. All right,
Chad has impressed that upon me. Wade has impressed that upon me. That doesn't add hours to my day, but I do get it.
Yeah,
I can tell you, in all honesty, I show up early, I stay late.
I don't.
Saturdays are not mine.
I
And
don't
you know how that works.
I understand.
So you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And while I can say I'll try, what I cannot say is August 14th, I will be. I don't know.
Well, and I would just add, can't add hours to your day, nor can it add minutes to our meeting, and we're 47 minutes into the meeting and we're still on the first of your several bullet points.
Well, we're like 17 minutes, but
Well, it's,
I think-
I mean, it's 6:47, right?
Yeah.
And we've got other
I know.
items on the agenda.
it's been a long preface, but I think item number one is that I'm hearing a committee consensus for direction toward. Yes. we
I
support-
have one comment.
Okay.
I think putting speed bumps at stop signs is ridiculous. And it doesn't, speed bumps, you're not gonna get people making a right turn or a left turn at 50 miles an hour into that street. And the speed bumps those speed bumps are 30, 35 mile speed bumps. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
But it doesn't function as a speed bump in the case of where the bike paths are gonna be. It functions as extra protection for the people who are on that bike path, to remind the drivers that they have to look for cars, but they also have to be mindful that there are bikes that might be traveling.
Because these are raised.
I don't think,
Right.
I don't
They're not
think the speed bump functions that way. If you really need to remind somebody, putting in the flashing lights makes a lot more sense and it's a lot safer. But that's my comment.
Yeah, where do we have raised sidewalks anywhere else in the city? All over?
We tend
Out of how many?
We tend to have speed bumps more away from intersections,
Right,
but
and-
mid-block crosswalks,
Intersections, where do we have them? Sub
I
crosswalk.
can't think of an
Maybe-
intersection.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we've tried to
Yeah.
avoid that. Haven't we in the past?
We have in the past, I think, been more concerned with, turning vehicles if they start slipping because they're
Yeah.
turning while changing their vertical direction. So mid-block crosswalks, got
Yes,
them. I don't know of any at intersections. Were you mentioning something?
No, I was just, no, Maywood, but that's in the that's not an intersection. That's.
a raised sidewalk. a
Yeah, but
raised
it's
crosswalk?
not in the intersection.
It's not in the
No,
intersection. No,
Right.
no,
no, those are in the middle of the block,
right,
Right.
which is where they're beneficial.
right, because there's a pedestrian
Right.
crossing to the park.
And some of those aren't even needed, like the crosswalk across from my house, which goes to Elm Lawn School. I mean, it doesn't need to be raised because the
It's
only
not
time it's really used is when there's a crossing guard.
And
So-
it's not raised, correct?
Yeah. Huh?
And it's not raised.
It's not raised. No.
Just to sort of move us forward on this question. Do we think it would be beneficial to put the speed bump or raised area somewhere other than an intersection if we're looking at it for that purpose? Or do we think that?
Yeah, but in this neighborhood, you can't
It's-
do that. it's like a new urban development, small lots, driveways every 10 feet. You're really not gonna be able to put a speed bump any place on these roads. But the intersection, and yet the intersection really doesn't do any good.
Where's this, where's?
I think
the stop
speed
sign?
speed bumps are appropriate when there's a proven need for them by testing.
So there's not one, so that would be okay.
Well, all three of these are at a stop sign from at least one
One
approach.
direction, yeah.
Right? So this would have a stop approaching it. Now this is a stop over here. So somebody's just picking up speed or they're changing direction, but they're not going, 30 or to Carl's point, really fast. They're already going slow.
Mhm.
Here, there's maybe a little bit more distance for someone crossing High Road to have been picking up speed. But even they're probably not going very fast, I would say. If we put one in here, there's more opportunity, I think, for someone to have been speeding, even though they're at an intersection. It's a through road and a collector road, so it's probably got a lot of the subdivision traffic on it.
Well, I think what we've sometimes have done in the past, just to kind of show like, hey, drivers, people are using this crosswalk is like painted, something like painted crosswalks or some kind of attention thing. I've seen that before too, if we're not supportive of the raised crosswalks.
I think
Just
those-
something to like, I don't know.
I don't know that we do that. I've been advocating for that in Middleton.
I thought we've tried it before,
With, I'm sorry.
like painted like
Painted.
green, like that we've tried that way back. Or
Well,
maybe we
green's
just
not
got talked about
supported
it.
by the MUTCD except for bike lane extensions currently, so it's not a crosswalk thing.
Or not even green, but just like more stripes.
We do have what we call the ladder.
Yes,
swap.
yes.
We've put that on collector and arterial roads.
Yeah.
For the most part, because we think, oh, there's more traffic and it's going faster, so we want to really highlight this. So we haven't tended to put that on local roads.
Okay.
I wonder if Mark Opitz can add to the discussion.
Yeah, Mark, you're recognized.
Oh, hi, thank you. So there was a question about where this exists in Middleton, and I'm not aware of an example other than at driveways. So essentially, when you're turning off Century Avenue at, let's say, or Parmenter Street for that matter, and there's path on the side, and you essentially go up a ramp, the driveway ramp, and then you are at the level of the crosswalk of the path. So that's the analogy. But in terms of where this is done in the Madison area, there is a street called Eastwood, which goes, the Capital City Trail on the east side of Madison runs along Eastwood on the way to Atwood, and it crosses Russell Street. They just put one of these raised crosswalks in there. The crosswalk is set back from Eastwood by about a car length, I believe. Sean, I shared that photo with you back in June. So there is precedent for that in the area here. There's one other comment I was going to make about raised crosswalks. Oh, the green. We have not used green pavement markings in Middleton yet. Those are my two comments.
So we're back to, is there a preference consensus for one?
Who put that, like, who requested that to be in the sign?
It came out of the Plan Commission on June 13th. And then they said, well, let's have Public Works Committee and Head Bike Transit Committee weigh in on that. So they didn't make a decision. They recommended it and then said two other committees should provide input.
And Head Bike Transit has talked about this concept before, but we'll specifically address this issue on Thursday.
Is it on an agenda, Mark? I missed that.
I haven't, it was on, it's not posted yet. I was waiting to see what you were going to do, and I was going to put your minutes in the packet. Posted
Gotcha.
tomorrow.
Okay.
That committee is Thursday. That we're
Mhm.
Yeah.
there.
This next Thursday.
This coming
Thursday, this
Coming
coming
Thursday.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a better.
It's a rescheduled meeting. It was supposed to be held 2 weeks ago, but I made a mistake, so here we are.
Okay.
Can I ask Wayne a question? How screwed up does this make your drainage of the roads?
Well, it's a fair question. I think what we've done is we have designed it once without them. And now we've designed it once with them, and it's placed our inlets in different spots to pick up the water.
Okay. So you're able to handle it without too much difficulty?
Without adding,
Because what's going to happen with these, if there's not a drain right at them, you're gonna have a big pile of water.
Yeah, I think they've got that covered.
Got that
On the
covered.
high side there already.
Yeah, on the high side, we've added in,
Both sides of the road?
yeah.
I mean, it'll pond a bit during a heavy rain, but
Sure.
so goes life.
Yeah. So are we gonna act on each one of these individually or as a whole?
I think if we can at least pick them off one at a time and give clear guidance on what Wade should do.
You need a
from our
motion?
perspective.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of revisiting. Is there any way to, where else to put them if we want to, like, if the goal is to. But you were saying it needs to be near a bike path. Like
Well,
it'd be ideal.
I was just
guess.
saying that I don't view the raised crosswalks at High Road and where the bike path, I guess on Bellefontaine Boulevard South. Yeah, right there. I don't view those as functioning as speed bumps so much as functioning as pedestrian and bike safety enhancements. And or anybody who's in a wheelchair not having to go down and back out.
Yeah, I don't, it's hard to quantify that safety improvement, I guess. I mean, if they're going down and going across the street, they still have to make sure that.
Right,
their
but is
traffic
it,
not in conflict.
is it just as hard to quantify the downside to drivers? Like, you know, I mean, it's just, we have a complete streets policy that we should be following. And I think this type of
this is not
enhancement.
part of that. Speed bump, speed or raised crosswalks are not part of the
They're not,
complete streets recommendations necessarily.
they're not enumerated in the policy, but we are supposed to be considering all mobilities.
Yeah, that is my understanding of the policy as well. There's a general principle there, even if it's not specifically laid out in it, that we should try to be consistent with.
And I mean, from a technical perspective, not for or against any of these. I think there are fair points either way. I just don't know that there's a measurable safety component to it.
Right.
So I think discussion at this point has been exhausted. So how about we separate these out individually and vote on them? So if there's a motion for the raised crosswalks or against the raised crosswalks, could someone please make that motion?
I have a question about that. Ped Bike and Transit is going to consider this on Thursday. You'll be at that meeting,
Mhm.
as will I. I'm wondering, is this something, are we making a recommendation to them or to council or the planning commission or the developer?
I'm gonna view this as design guidance to the developer's engineer. That we're asking them specifically to do something.
I think I would defer to the Ped Bike and Transit Committee.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right.
What's the motion?
The motion is to defer to the Ped Bike and Transit Committee regarding the raised
Raised.
crosswalks. Yes, that's accurate?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
all right. So the motion on the table is ready for a vote. And visitor, could you please identify yourself?
Oh,
That's Carrie.
Oh, that's Carrie.
I think we've lost Kendra.
Kendra is, and her
Yeah.
video dropped a
Okay.
while ago.
Yeah. All right, so Alder Wilkos is not present for this vote. All those in favor of deferring to the Ped Bike and Transit Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Is that three?
that's three, yes. All opposed?
Nay,
I missed you, Don.
No, I was an aye.
He
You
said
were not.
an aye
Yeah.
the first time.
So
Yep.
I'm gonna count that as 4-1. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Just to be clear, then we should draw what that committee tells us to draw.
Correct. They will be sending their report back anyway, so that we're deferring that on this item specifically.
Okay. I just want to be clear, and I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I can be difficult. So if they tell us to leave them in, or if they tell us to take them out, and we come back with that, that's what you expect. It's not going to be.
Yes,
Okay.
we have deferred consideration to them on this issue. Their recommendation is agreed by us by that motion.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so. A change to the sanitary sewer network. Was the next
So
bullet.
let me, jump ahead a few pages here. Okay, so of sort of our 4 primary roads here. We have envisioned at the time of doing the sanitary network analysis, and Strand did that for us, that the main trunk line of sanitary sewer was going to extend along Bellefontaine Boulevard up to the Platte Edge. And I'm gonna go to a different drawing for it. Okay, so in blue is kind of the overall development. The first phase plan is the majority of this western portion, right? Just in round figures. So the previously studied sewer network envisioned that this trunk line would come along and sort of daylight here at the North Platte Edge for future development to tie into. In looking at it in more detail, Wiser Engineering was proposing that the main trunk line of sewer come along part of Bellefontaine, then go north along Waxwing Way, which is that north-south road, and daylight at the Platte Edge here instead. And in his memo, he provided rationale for why he's proposing that now. But what I don't have is analysis by Strand on our behalf within the regional context to corroborate Wade's newest thinking. So I would appreciate that. Wade seemed open to that, but I want to bring that to the committee as a policy issue because it starts to get into asking somebody else to do something that I don't have the resources to do.
has this been passed on to Strand for evaluation?
No, it hasn't. No. I think they could do that pretty timely. It's not a huge ask.
It's a huge firm, so it's a huge firm, so I don't.
Yeah, I think they've got bodies they could probably throw at. Yeah, I was having trouble even just opening contours on Dane County's website.
If I add anything, for us, it just makes sense because it's, if you think of the land out there, it's the low point, right? It's following the swale. It opens up more connection options. I think it was actually an oversight by Strand not to propose that as the low connecting point for sanitary.
Yeah, and I don't know, is this, do you know, Wade, all controlled by one landowner?
I don't know if
Or
all
is-
of it is, but the more or less the North 40 is one landowner. Sorry,
Over here.
I'm referring to the west edge. You can kind of see the fence line there, the dark woods. Yeah, right. Yep, just south of that, there's a line there shown. So that landowner gets to that corner as well as to the low point on the south line.
Right, so I'm not here to say it's not a better idea. I always appreciate when someone brings a better idea to me. But I just don't have the tools to evaluate that, and I want to be sure from a regional context it works.
So we need a motion on,
There's,
Can I just ask one quick question, Sean? Do you have no idea how long that might take?
I haven't asked.
My point is that we could do either way. If it's gonna take a long time, we can go back to the other way too. To meet the Strand report. But I think this way makes more sense in a lot of ways. So if I knew how long it would take, you know. If Strand, if you guys said, well, if Strand comes back and says it has to be that way, then it has to be that way. Then I guess we do it that way. If it's gonna take more than a week, we can do it either way.
Yeah, I don't know.
So going back to the agenda, is that another? Like request, I guess, of a motion that we need to make one way or the other?
I think we should at least, I mean, if not stick with the original analysis, get reviewed analysis. Otherwise, again, I'm not saying it's a good idea or bad idea. I just don't know. And I'm always a little bit nervous recommending something when I don't know.
So we looked at the minutia. Strand was doing a bigger thing. We believe if they had, been thinking about it. Of course, they weren't designing for projects. They'd have been like, oh yeah, it should be at the low place. If this committee says, no, just stick with the Strand report, fine. We think it's a better design. What we would like to say is if Strand's okay with it, we'll come back with it redesigned. Right. If Strand's not okay with it, we'll just leave it alone. Or if Strand can't turn it around, or you don't want Strand to look at it, we'll leave it alone.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, what is the exact timeline you need for this decision to be made?
Your next meeting.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that we had that. So,
Well, let me
It's all
back up
over.
a sec. We need Strand's analysis to come through at least me to get to Wade in time to redraw something.
Yeah.
So the 14th of March is not going to do it.
Right.
It needs to be like a week from now.
Yes.
okay,
Is there a way that Sean, you and I could arrange a meeting with Strand and verbalize this? Does that provide enough surety or does it need to be?
It might, I would need to touch base with them first and figure it out. But yeah, that might be the fast way once we get into it.
So just let me throw this out. We can make a motion to pass this on to Strand and based on their recommendation or lack of, either go back to the original with lack of, or if they agree with this change, to go with the change.
provided it meets the timeline needed.
I am, because I put in there that if it's not within a timely manner,
Okay,
you just go back to the original.
all right, great. Sorry, I missed that part. Yeah,
Sean, did you get all that?
I'm about to have.
Yeah.
How many tenses is there?
Second.
Thanks, Carl.
all right. And since we're now on the vote, those in favor, please say aye.
Get a restatement of the.
Oh,
motion,
yeah,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Okay, the
Okay,
motion
yeah.
is to pass this on to Strand for review and go with whatever they recommend. If they cannot get the review done in a timely manner, then the developer goes with the original concept. Is that easier, Sean?
Yep.
What is a
And
timely?
timely manner is
Within the next 2
as
weeks.
It's what?
beginning
Within
of
the
next
next
week.
2 weeks.
Well, I
Because
think it has to be a week.
yeah, they need it, they need it in a week
In a week.
because otherwise they're gonna bump into issues with our next meeting. So,
So a week.
All right.
all right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none, great.
Right.
Next is substandard vertical curvatures.
Yeah, and part of it is, Wade and I were chatting earlier today, part of it is I have an inaccurate note in several of the plan views. There are differences between crest vertical curves and sag vertical curves, right? And I had from the published standards one incorrect number. I think the memo has a different incorrect number, but the published standards are, in fact, I brought it along to me. So for a crest vertical curve at a 30-mile-an-hour design speed, which is a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed, we always add just a little bit of forgiveness in case something makes a mistake, that they can go as low as 19. This is just a rate of change of slope as you're going from one slope to another slope, right? If you're getting into a sag vertical curve, the published number is 37. So I had 30 and 40. The 40 is not so terribly far off. The 30 is. That's closer to 20.
So the other, what was it? This one's sag and the other one's what?
This one's sag. The other one we just call crest, but it's a hill. So as you're going over the top of a hill, the rate of change of that curvature could be 19. And if you're going into a sag,
Can be 40.
then it could be
30.
30. One thing that had not occurred to me is several of these sag vertical curves are near intersections. And if people will be going slower near these intersections, there's reason to support a lower K value. People can negotiate a sag vertical curve if they're going really, really slowly.
Okay, so I see these notes all over.
Yeah, there's probably 4 or 5 of them in there.
Yeah. So there's one on drawing 1. That's a sag, that's 40, right?
Page is that?
So I'm not, I don't have a,
5 of 43 or 29 of your packet, whichever you're in.
big issue. Franklin.
Right, so this should be more like 37.
Huh?
And I
Yeah,
can't read that. It says 20 right now.
oh, I see up there, you're saying it's 40 and that's really 20.
Yeah, it's designed at 20, but the published standard would allow for 37. And then the question is, part of the question is, if people are going slower than 25 miles an hour through here,
Yeah.
it could be a lower number, because there's also a formula for calculating these numbers. And I think we could support then rationally a lower number than the published standard.
Sean, do you want me to talk about this specific one and why this K value is first one with that overflow?
Yes, because
Okay.
there is a special case just for this one.
Yeah, so on the plan view up there, you can see those culvert pipes coming across Bellefontaine there. So that represents this major drainage swale, 100+ acres that comes through the plat. So if you see the vertical curve on the east side of the profile, there's a low point there, very small low point that allows something over the 200-year storm event to still spill over and go through our ponds, as opposed to going over to High Road.
So it would literally go from this ditch over the top of the road and then through a ditch to get to this pond.
Yep.
For orientation.
Yeah.
So that's an overland spillway effectively.
And the idea behind that is, again, better to send the water through we're designing up to the 200-year storm event, but you know, if we have one bigger or if a pipe was plugged or some emergency situations, better to send the water through the pond. That is setting actually our high point for the vertical curve that's in the middle of the sheet and west. Right there. So that elevation sets that, and from there, it's just simple math to get back to our connection at High Road. And so that K value for that sag vertical curve there is at 20, which allows for this overflow to function the way it should. We all want. And the second thing to keep in mind is that I know it doesn't always come up in conversation, but we're close to the stop sign line. Conditions aren't probably 30-mile-an-hour design speed. So if you consider the AASHTO chart and other things, if you were to pick a 20-mile-an-hour design speed at that spot, the K value is 17. So we feel the 20, considering all these different variables, is a robust design.
Have you run the formula for that? This, get the 17 that you're talking about?
I'm just referring to the chart
Oh,
we talked earlier.
And
Okay.
there's no chance in the future that intersection will have a stoplight. That would then make it continue, not a stop sign. I can't remember if the TIA envisioned.
No, that's a stop condition into the distant future. Okay. Two-way stop, I should say, not even 4.
So you're saying, Sean, that that's like 20 is pretty significant change from the standard of 37.
It is, right?
So you want that 37 to be the minimum number?
Well, that's the minimum number for a design speed of 30 miles an hour.
Okay.
But if we can
It's not a
agree that
maximum
there's
number, it's the
lower-
minimum.
The minimum number, yes,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. that it should not be lower than that. But if the speed itself goes down, well, then of course this number also goes down.
Right.
I didn't see the 17 you just
So that was the MDM, Sean, and
The
then.
25,
the other
26.
ones, this is the Astro from the Astro. I brought it because it allows us to go.
Oh, you get down to design speeds of 20, so assumed running speed of 15-ish.
Right,
Then you could get as low as 20.
right.
Yes, okay,
Okay.
good. And that's
Right.
part of what I was talking about, is if we can justify it,
Okay,
maybe as low as a speed of,
okay, so that one's good.
And I would actually, just one more thing to add to it is if the bike and ped committee now decides they want these crossings. I think there's more rationale to think that design speed is lower at a spot than it otherwise would be.
There's a
Well-
stop sign there, it's gonna be low.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people don't turn much faster than 15.
Or you're our representative on the ped bike committee. What are your thoughts?
Oh, just the crosswalks, I was gonna agree with Don that. If they're at the stop sign anyways, I don't know if they're gonna have much impact. Right, like,
Also,
Yeah.
and Carl, yeah,
Carl was more adamant by voting no.
I meant like, no, they won't have much impact on the speed and in these
Okay.
pictures, that's what I meant to say.
E4,
So this is one of those cross vertical curves. Well, my number of 30 is incorrect. That should be more like 20, right? 19. Public. This would be on a route, so it's not at an intersection. It's not at a stop. But 20 is more than 19, so we should be all right here.
okay,
Let me slow down for weight. So we were just on to P4. You got that?
Yeah, so
Yep.
that one's okay.
yep,
Yep, okay.
Next one I have is on P7. Yeah, it's
E7. Next one.
So you have 20 past 19, so we should be all right there on P7.
Okay,
Issue with a sag on that same page, P7.
one on P8.
So normally that would be 37 instead of 7.
Yeah, so if I can add to this one, if you look at where that tag is just on the left side of that vertical curve there, if you can zoom in there, Sean, right there. So that open circle in the middle there on the profile, just one to the left, that one right there. Yep, that is the lane edge of the connecting street, right? Our profile starts at center line. Okay, so when that K value says 7 there, the idea is that it's 7 right at the inlets, right at the stop sign.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we can get that up to 10, right? We can do some modification there, but yeah, right there.
And this is going to be, I gotta believe, a pretty low speed again.
Yeah,
And
right.
westbound is 0. Northbound has no traffic, so that right should be slow, but it's not going to be a R until this road goes somewhere. There's just no turning rate.
So that one would be okay also,
Well, you might,
based on.
if you can pick it up a little bit, I
I said 10.
encourage it.
I think when we get to those final details of those ramps, that's where we'll be.
Okay,
So, yeah, I think we will take that recommendation to try and be better than 7.
Seven as well, 9. It's also at a stop. It's also at a long-term T intersection, so everybody is either turning or stopping. You can look
Is
at
that
that
all?
one
Is
too,
that
right?
all of those?
I think.
I think so. I can't find any more.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what other questions? I mean, there are comments that you made in here that we can vote on as okay, but there are also other questions that, So like on. So developer request, this is drawing number. P10. And it's basically says. Developer requests Public Works Committee consideration to construct 5-foot sidewalk instead of 10-foot path until High Road is reconstructed to an urban section.
Did I get that right, Wade?
No.
I
think
might
that-
have read something into your writing.
Yeah, I think the idea was we were High Road right now is a rural section.
Yeah.
And building that path is tricky with the grades out there and the swale and the ditch that exists.
Okay.
So I think the intent for us was to defer construction of that path.
Just
until
not
High
build
Road.
anything
Correct,
pedestrian wise along the east side of High Road until we rebuild the road later.
correct.
Okay, so I got the request wrong. That's important.
Okay, so it's 5 foot is okay.
I'm wondering, should we back up to the
Yeah, let's-
A thing?
Let's
first?
back up to the K values and then we can
Oh,
move
okay.
forward to the high road discussion.
I was just gonna say, bump the K values into the final, but we can do separate if you want.
Yeah, I think I would suggest then that the committee sort of reiterate support for the AASHTO and WSDOT standards,
Okay,
but making exceptions where we know speed is going to be lower, not to use the design speed as our value.
And Sean, does this have any connection to the sidewalk comments that you have on this page 41 of the packet about the excessively steep sidewalk?
Nope, different issue.
Okay,
They're working on that.
they're working on that. Just wondering if the sidewalks steep.
So you need a motion
Yeah,
on
we
the K
had-
values?
Yeah, if the
Yeah.
committee would support something like just reiterating support for the AASHTO and WSDOT published standards, but allowing for design to use less than the design speed at it or near an intersection, we reasonably expect running speeds will be much lower.
The specific intersections we've discussed, yes.
Yeah, but even in a general
General
sense.
Okay,
That helps out to make sure that what we're deciding today is fair for everybody
Mhm.
across the
Yeah.
board.
If I said I'll make that motion, you remember what you said?
It's on tape. I
Oh,
actually
good.
pushed record tonight.
All right.
okay, so
I'll second.
the motion we're voting on is to allow lower speeds than the WSDOT stand at areas with
Lower K
low
values
K
due to lower
values
speed.
due to lower speeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Great. Motion second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Okay, now we're on to High Road.
Yeah, so the question is about deferring path along High Road, not the same as my note here. Just not to build any sort of pedestrian or off-road, I should say, facility.
When are we going to reconstruct High Road?
Aha, now there is a great question.
It's not. in the
No,
We'll all be
I
dead.
feel like we have to have something there, because there's already so many complaints from people in that area that there's. No,
part of the issue is that, as we've annexed things into the city, we don't have control over High Road. Options of it are in town of Springfield and town of Middleton. So we don't get to rebuild the road just because we want to. And that becomes, I think, a big part of the frustration of folks who were in the city. Misty Valley, for instance, is very interested in getting a sidewalk path on their side of the road.
yeah,
Across the road twice. But with the ditch there and the road the way it is, it's.
Is
not
the
right.
implication here that the deference would still have the developer to do the sidewalk once the road is done?
Typically, the way we've done something like that, because the city developer agreement is long over, right? So Misty Valley, for instance, just made an estimate of a design and paid for their half of the road. And that's not abnormal. In fact, Spring Hill Estates paid for the west half of High Road, much further south of here, up at the top of the hill.
Okay.
And we didn't rebuild that road until mid-90s. They had already long since paid so that they would not be assessed.
So we would do the same thing here.
Yeah, that we would take a deposit, file it, and when we get around to building it, we'd use that money.
I'll make that motion
I'm sorry, what's the motion?
to allow the developer to defer the building and construction of that. But the city would then take and place it in escrow. Is that what happens with it?
Won't be
It's
worth
in
it.
its own segregated.
5 years.
In a segregated account, the cost of half of their share of the construction
Of the road. you know.
of the road, which would include the sidewalk.
How does that work though if prices change, right? So in like 10 years, it gets built, that can, I mean, wouldn't
They
it be
do.
better to have a actual, yeah, they change, right? So it's like, it's not as valuable.
Yeah, but you don't know if they're gonna be in business in 10 years.
Right, no, so it's good to collect something,
It's
but
good
I
to
think
collect
that it'd
money
be
now.
better to just have a path.
It's
But
my
not-
understanding when you redo the road, that path then gets ripped out and you have to put in a new one probably.
But that might not happen to us for like 10 years.
Rate should be about.
Alder Hanira.
I have a question. So are we talking about a path, like continuing the existing path, which is asphalt and temporary, from what I understand, but it's there?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about putting in a sidewalk or a new bike path and curbs and all that? What are we talking about?
So for right now, what's shown would be to put in a bike path, so that's this 10-foot wide double line, right? Then there's a ditch, and then the edge of the road is up here.
Mhm.
So this does not have storm sewer, it does not have curb and gutter, it's not an urban section, it's still a rural section road, just with a path near it.
And the path would connect to right now where it crosses a Keneal Trail.
No, it wouldn't get that far south, because that's beyond the plat limits. And outside of the city of Middleton.
So where would it connect? Well, that's kind of an issue.
It would start at a farm in the town and end at a farm in the town. And just go.
Well, it would
along
end at-
Basically,
It just, so there'd be a gap from Keneal Trail to the southernmost border.
yeah, so this wouldn't get us.
I'm gonna open doors so that we get a little bit of a.
Oh,
breeze
yeah.
here.
Charles.
So I can. So Misty Valley is in. Keneal Trail comes through about here. So we have a path on the east side of High Road, south of Keneal Trail. But we don't have control over the east half of this piece of High Road.
But we have a path where we don't have control of the
Yeah,
property.
quite a long
So-
time ago, we asked the town, do you mind if we build a path in your right of way? And they
And-
didn't mind.
And this chunk is in the town of Springfield and it's Ziegler property, correct?
I believe, yes.
So this is my district and I just feel strongly that that path needs to be filled in somehow, even if it's even if it means the city has to approach the town of Springfield, which I understand we're gonna be hearing from them on Tuesday anyway, at the council meeting a week from tomorrow. I hate the idea of people having to cross the street, not cross High Road, not have a continuous sidewalk. And then cross, because I just walked it, Chad, I just walked this from my house to get to the groundbreaking. And it's not a comfortable walk, it's just not, so.
And you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
I think
really circuitous.
I have no problem with just the same kind of asphalt path that we have right now that goes to Keneal Trail. Nothing fancy, but I do think that needs to go in.
So how wide is it?
10 feet.
I think it's 10.
It
This
is-
I
this
agree with
design is 10. I think the existing is 10.
And then it's up to the city to approach the town of Springfield and the Ziegler family to ask, can we, the city, continue this, make this a continuous path?
Yeah. I don't want to insinuate it's impossible. I just want to tell you, we can't demand it. It's not on our terms, then we can just choose. So.
So then I'll take back my motion. Just
um,
haven't put it in.
So, and there are even a couple of options there. One would be from Bellefontaine to the south, again, or full plat limits? What's your preference there?
Correct.
well, okay, the full plat. What's phase one? How far does phase one extend?
It goes this whole distance because it's kind of the west edge.
So then do the whole,
Yeah,
Yeah, I would go for it.
All right, so
As designed,
Say
Yeah.
that.
can you get it in at 10 feet?
So it just might be better off taking the escrow from the northern half of it, having us put the path in from the southern half, so you're not. Twice, but that's up to you guys.
Did you want to make that into a motion or vote on it, or just by consensus give guidance?
Making
Let's
motions
make a
for all the
motion.
others.
okay,
go
so
ahead, Lisa.
I guess I'll move that we not defer construction of the path along High Road.
second. All in favor?
I
hi,
All opposed, hearing none. Sidewalk connection from lot 4 down to Bellefontaine Boulevard.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit already, maybe in fact enough. Okay, so. This is the east edge of the plat, lot 4 is off the map, but whatever, you kind of saw how that large multifamily triangular pie-shaped lot. Gonna have a sidewalk down here. Providing another 5-foot easement beyond the plat in which to build a 5-foot sidewalk down to Bellefontaine Boulevard. In which case we could get law saying on this side.
Since they're planning for a sidewalk there, I would move that we do that. Is there gonna be a 10-foot again bike path? No,
Nope,
just
5-foot
5-foot
sidewalk.
sidewalk, okay.
5-foot sidewalk.
We have a motion.
Sidewalk within a 10-foot public easement, right, Sean?
And with that would also, I would move the elevated crosswalk if it's accepted by the bike path and the other committee to that side of the road also, because it really doesn't do much on, doesn't connect anything.
Yeah, so are you saying then? Just
Take that.
remove this crosswalk?
Yeah, and move it.
Bill, you want it over here?
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's what Sean was kind of saying when we first were talking.
makes
That
more
makes
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, might even get a lot of use with the development of that big lot. You never know.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And
can we restate the motion?
yeah, if you could.
Oh,
please
to
restate-
build a
yeah.
sidewalk on the east side of the development. Phase 1. And move the crosswalk to that side also, across Bellefontaine. From lot 4 to Bellefontaine.
And not also on the west.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none? Awesome. Last, road driveway configurations at the north end of Waxwing Way.
If there's any. So this is, well. I don't know if you're all oriented, but. North is off to the right side of this page, so if in your minds you want to rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees, that's fine. But this is the north plat edge, if you will. This is that large multifamily development, and across the street is a reserve for another large lot. And rather than provide a circular cul-de-sac, Wade and I have come to terms with just providing 2 square easements on these large lots for now. So that vehicles can make a T turnaround up here. I think that's fine. Most people aren't going to be trying to turn around anyway, but for those that will, at least they'll have the capability to do it. in the long term, this street is designed to continue north. When that land also wants to come into the city. Part of the disconnect, my expectation was that the design would include curb and gutter to the end of the road, which is going to be there someday anyway. The sidewalk would continue up to the flat end because it's going to be there someday anyway. That these would be driveway rooms because they're going to be there someday anyway. And use them for turnaround, that's fine. Then we're all set up for the future and nobody comes crying foul like, gee, you changed. You know, the way I come into my drive.
I'll move, accept that.
We have a second,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Hearing everyone saying, hearing none opposed, the motion passes. And I think that concludes, Red Tail Ridge Phase 1.
That was all of the design guidance I pulled out as needed, but Wade, do you have
Okay.
anything else? Having looked at this that you need guidance on?
The only other thing would be intersections and the
Okay.
details, those sidewalks.
Yeah,
If you feel like we're in a spot, we can work through that because it's spot grades and nobody likes spot grades. Then I think we're set based on our conversations. I just didn't know if it was appropriate here.
what Wade and I talked about earlier was some of the grades approaching landing squares at intersections, right, are pretty steep by our standards. Normally, we say don't have a sidewalk grade exceed 5% unless it's running at the same grade as a road and there's just nothing you can do about it. One spot in particular that caught my eye was more like 14%. And so Wade and I talked about, well, let's try to extend that and soften that grade to 8% then. And there are good reasons why it's unusually steep with limited opportunity to change the roads as they're approaching. One of the outfalls of that is, you know, the sidewalk then for some distance is going to be below the curb line. So that grass terrace area actually drains into the sidewalk to drain down the street and out the curb ramp back into the street. People don't love that. I don't love that. But when I have to balance things, I think people would tend to prefer a little bit of grass that drains onto the sidewalk for some distance than a steep sidewalk.
Also an accessibility issue if we grade it too steeply, so.
And this is on page 41, correct? And is this where the big swale comes in and the sag value on the road is understand?
Wasn't that
It's
south end of Wax Wing?
Waxwing and Bellefontaine.
Well, this was at Wax Wing and boy, what's the sign there?
Well, you've got a comment on page 41 of the packet, if that helps. That, or at least that's the one I'm looking at. There might be more.
Yeah, up to the intersection details for wherever those were.
yeah, that's the best spot.
Which page that is?
It's I2.
I two?
I think it's got a 42 at the bottom.
They all have a 42 at the bottom.
Oh, you're right. There it is. Yep, right there.
So Waxman Way goes to the South Platte line. This is temporarily just a little dead end street. But part of the problem is this is coming down pretty quickly. This is coming down pretty quickly, and there's a fair amount of grade. I think Dan was saying it's a foot of fall from here to here.
Yeah.
So this ramp actually is draining away from the road at sort of max ADA slope. This ramp is draining down to the road at max ADA slope, and this was rising at 14% to get up to a normal terrace. And so what we were talking about this afternoon is let's knock this down to 8%, even though it's going to extend the limits of the adverse terrace.
What's the max ADA grade?
Well, it depends what we're ADA is really written more for sites, you know, buildings and sites. ProAg is really written for roads, but they have some maximum distance of like 20 feet before you start to get to a landing square.
And yeah, and then they have this goofy note that says if the street is at a slope that doesn't prevent you from ADA, you can match the street, still be compliant. So there are
Yeah.
different standards there, but the intent would be to hold the 1 in 12 or the max slope of 8.33%. To extend that up to catch up with the profile of Waxwood.
And I don't know where it intercepts. I don't know if Dan knows that yet, but. So it makes this sort of unfortunate slope longer but gentler.
Makes sense.
Fine.
Can you go to slide 41 or I'm
Sure.
sorry, page 41 of the packet? Because that one too says it looks like it's 9.99%.
Yep, same thing. So at that one, I think the intent would be to. So the city standard detail has a 15-foot run out for this abnormal terrace. But we were requesting, and Sean, I think agrees, is make that 20, 25, whatever it needs to be to get those slopes down. But just deviate from the standard detail because that's better.
Like bring it back.
Correct. Yeah, so that 9 would turn into an 8.
Yeah, so there's a few of those spots.
And I did have 2 more questions, Charles, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One is, so the outlet drainage basins says they need to, in order to permanently seed them, they have to be done by September 15th. Is that your plan?
So we were making a push to try and get the permanent seating established September 1, basically when it has to. Knowing mass grading just commenced and we have a lot of work in front of us, we have kind of redesigned and re-permitted those as temporary sediment basins through a full calendar year.
Okay.
So
And then your street lights, kind of street lights. Are they
I
going to be
think we
LED?
just- no, we had received a standard from engineering staff.
It's noted on here.
Yeah, we just had screwed that up, but we have that nomenclature. The intent is to match what the city sent us. So this, actually, yeah, right there. Yep. That is what we're intending to do there.
And are those LED lamps is what I'm asking.
Oh, yeah, this is
Yeah,
our
yeah.
new city standard that
Yeah.
the city settled on.
Yeah, we picked that
Yep, just
a
wanted
few
to.
months ago.
Thanks.
Anything else for anybody else? Since we're here.
I just would add, thank you for your comments, very helpful, and I think it helps drive Sean and I to get this plan tuned up, so appreciate all the comments. I didn't know if discussion at the start of the meeting about a quorum. With people being absent would be something we would, inquire about, but wondering about the next meeting. There's a chance for a quorum.
We have 2 absences I know of. That Don and Carl are unavailable. 14th. So we still could have a quorum. We have 7 members and we need 4.
Thank you.
And you guys are really gonna miss out? Tell.
You mean it's gonna go to 10 o'clock?
Oh. I'm saying, yeah, bring a pillow and a snack.
Popcorn.
Yeah, so thank you for joining our meeting.
Thank
I
you.
think this discussion of Red Tail Ridge. So let's move on to the capital budget for 2024.
Speaking of quorums, do we have one? I just got a notice that I have to leave in a few minutes. Do we have one if I have to step out?
As long as no one else leaves.
Sorry about that. I just gotta
You
file.
Leave for 2 seconds and then I'll
Okay,
come back
okay.
before you leave.
Sure, that sounds good.
So the
Okay.
quorum stays in
I
session.
got a notice about one of my kids needs something, so.
All right.
Go, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we regard this as excused.
Well, I was gonna say, point of personal privilege, can we
defer consideration the rest of the agenda?
No, I was gonna say, can we take a break for 5 minutes to use the facility?
Yes.
Is that okay if I
I can't
don't
remember.
come back?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
I can't remember if I need to make a motion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
if
move
need-
that we take a
Yeah.
5-minute break.
Yeah, move to
Okay.
5-minute recess. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Great.
Okay, sorry about this.
Good luck.
Don't
Yeah,
worry.
yeah, thank you. See you all next time.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I join you at the?
These are a lot of road projects in this budget for next.
Yeah, and frankly, it's too many.
It's too many.
We don't have the staff.
Huh?
We don't have the staff to keep up with
Yeah.
this. And it needs to be done. That's the flip side, right?
So did the 2 million go up?
No.
Because
It's-
this says it's
Yeah.
2,275,000. Does that include other things? So we're a little bit over at this point.
Exactly, yeah, and I don't know if the council then would want to trim something, and I'm not really married to these estimates yet, I'm more.
Yeah,
interested
well,
in
that's the other issue.
prioritization.
It's kind of like throwing darts, right?
Oh, a lot of it is, it's iterative, I would say.
So
In a different form, if you,
what was the other TIF thing?
permit.
Oh, Parmenter Street reconstruction. Oh, I didn't realize that was. Because we've been talking about that, right? Century, north of Century.
Yep, that's under
Yeah.
design right now, but you don't have money for construction yet,
Oh,
just design. So, yeah, we are intending to build it if we can get right away.
so is that an existing TIF or?
It is. It's a tip.
Man, that's a big number for. Yeah, I thought we were talking about. You know, the turn into. What do you call that, the MOC or whatever, you know, from Parmenter?
Yeah.
You know, when I go the recycle center, that is really a. Weird turn. I mean, there's an island right there,
Yeah.
you know, and it's two double yellows.
Is it?
Yeah,
See, I
I'm
never
pretty
remember.
sure on either side of the island, it comes down this way.
I'm usually
You
so
know,
fixated
I've
on
always-
other cars. I don't
I
even.
know,
look
you
at
know,
those
I've
stores.
always been taught that that's an illegal turn. When you're coming from the
You
south.
can cross a road. They just don't want you to pass cars. It's double yellow.
So Sean, I'd asked what strand you have to call, but they were probably still in high school when I worked there.
Well, for sewer, we call Stetzer.
Oh, okay.
He finds.
Him I know,
So,
so,
yeah.
but he's not doing the work.
Now that we're all back and the 5-minute recess has ended, let's move on to the capital budget. I believe that we had a number of interested parties who might want to speak on this. If you are interested in speaking on the capital budget, please use the raise hand function on Zoom to be recognized. Robert Owen, you are recognized. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I do have a brief comment on the vehicles and equipment proposal. I support the F-150 Lightning as a work truck for the city, not as an ornament for the MOC that's just used once a month by one department or another. I think if we're going to buy a $105,000 truck, we ought to use it. I also support the heavy-duty pole setter piece of equipment, but I have reservations about the two other proposals. Specifically, I disagree with the $365,000 J-hook truck. There's a cheaper, lower carbon approach to picking up leaves than the department's proposing here. as I understand what they're proposing, they want to use the J-hook truck to collect bins that have been filled with leaves. They're using bins that have diesel engines on them to power very powerful leaf vac equipment. There's a much lower energy, more efficient and lower capital cost solution here, I think. Where you would use an electric tractor with a PTO that would drive a PTO driven leaf vac, which would blow the leaves into one of the F550 light dump trucks. You could use several of those light dump trucks in connection with the PTO leaf vac arrangement, and you could do this job with less noise, less capital investment, less energy, considerably less energy expiration, less energy use. And really there's savings all the way around. So I would urge the department to reconsider its approach here. I think this is kind of following on to a traditional approach and not really thinking about alternatives. Perhaps they're not aware of some of the alternatives, but there are alternatives. There are electric tractors. There are PTO driven leaf blowers, and we do have F550 trucks. In addition, we can get F550 trucks now in an electric configuration where they don't have diesel or gasoline engines. There are companies that are in the business of retrofitting F550 chassis or developing new chassis for electric trucks. They have done that for at least several dump trucks, and we could do it for our city dump trucks. So my urge to the committee is that it defer the $365,000 J-hook truck until the department can economically justify that choice, and I don't think they can. And secondly, that it require the department to either go the electric route for the F550 dump truck or defer the dump truck. We have dump trucks. We don't need to keep buying diesel and gasoline fueled appliances while the climate is going crazy due to the fact that we're burning fossil fuel. We need to stop doing that. So that's my comment, and I appreciate your willingness to listen. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight and sitting through an hour and a half to make that comments. Kevin Spittler, you are now recognized.
I just want to echo what Bob said. It's time to start thinking of alternative ways to do things that help us lower our carbon footprint. I'm not sure of all the uses for the J-hook style truck. It's obviously very expensive. If we've got one that can last another year or two, let's hang on to that instead of buying a new one that will spew diesel fumes for its lifetime. And let's think outside the box a little bit more and maybe look for solutions that are occurring in other communities. And we can help you do that if you'd like. It's time to find different ways for doing things that help us meet our climate goals that were established back in 2018. Thanks for letting me speak, John.
And Brad Hopwood, did you have a public comment for this agenda item that you would like to make?
Oh, no. I'll preface, Brad is our operations manager.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So he prepared this part of this budget.
Okay, all right. So Sean, I think Brad does have a comment he might like to make about this part of the budget.
If you want to address any of that, Brad.
So for the F-150, it's gonna be a daily driven vehicle by multiple different departments. Basically, what I want to do is I want to gauge it because it doesn't come in a work truck configuration. It only comes in the 4-door. And right now we have 8-foot boxes. This comes in the 5.5-foot or 6.5-foot box, which doesn't sound like it's a lot less, but to the stuff that we haul and the payload, it is a lot less. So I want to gauge if this could work for our parks, streets, operations, and mechanics, as well as possibility for water utility in the future. So that was the idea behind the F-150, was that it gets used by every single department. We use it for a daily use thing and see if it can replace the ICE vehicles we currently have.
And I'll back up just in case somebody's unfamiliar with ICE. It's just internal combustion engine. Anybody? Well,
And then
the
the international J-hook truck, that's a multi-use truck. It's not just for leaf picking. We run into a lot of issues when trying to put in pole bases, street lights, anything in the right of way, really, because there's so much stuff under the ground there. So we can't auger anymore. If you auger, you're going to run into something. It's inevitable. So this would also act as a hydrovac, and it would also clean out our storm sewer sumps as well as acting as a leaf picking truck.
Right. One of the big benefits from leaf picking, I'll just interject, we've looked at different ways to do this for multiple years. Right now, we run a crew of basically 3 people. We have a person driving the truck and a person swinging the hose and somebody else emptying the other truck. So we're running 2 trucks with 1 leaf vac. And this configuration would allow the driver with a remote control arm to pick up leaves. So they're not out of the cab breathing dust all day long. They'd be in the cab at least. And it would have some inefficiency because they have to go and drive and empty the truck box then, but instead of 3 people, it'd be 1 person.
And the other thing too is you'll see this on a replacement plan coming up. It's the same item. We're not asking for 2 of them. We're just asking for 1, but we would replace one of our leaf picking trailers with this truck.
I have a question about augering holes because I saw my neighbor had one. He was one of the people whose mailboxes got taken out by plowing. And I saw, I think it's the new Vector that cost in excess.
Big Blue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a big team, I assume they're training at the time. They were still learning how to use it. That seemed to be augering holes. So is it really the case that the street crew can no longer safely auger holes?
So that's a excavating hydro excavator.
Sorry, Brad.
Well, I
Oh,
guess
go
what
ahead. You're probably saying the same thing.
what I'm asking is, it says right there that the streets crew can no longer auger holes, but I just saw that happen.
Well, no, so let me back up.
Yeah.
A second. Okay, so we used to have a tractor with a gigantic drill bit on it, augering holes, drilling holes mechanically. The Vector shoots water at the dirt and then vacuums it up, kind of all in one motion. So it's not mechanically drilling anything. It's hydro excavating, we would call it, instead of augering. So it's chewing up the dirt using water, but that doesn't wreck fiber optic or copper lines underground like our auger does. And we used to get by just fine with a tractor and an auger, and we'd call Digger's Hotline and they'd say, oh, there's nothing there. And we'd go drill a hole, but there's so much there now and it's so expensive that we can't drill holes anymore. So we don't auger anymore. We just hydro excavate. That piece of equipment belongs to the water and sewer utility. We're pretty good about cross borrowing that stuff, but dibs are water and sewer stuff. So if they need it, they get it. We can't use it for sucking muck out of inlets or catch basins or hydro excavate.
How many mailbox pokes do you really do?
Do you know, Brad, how many we actually put in? Maybe half a dozen a year-ish?
If that, I mean, it depends on if it's requested or not. I know last year, I think we did 4 of them where we vacuumed out 4 holes for people.
It's usually street sign bases that get us. We do a lot of street sign work.
I don't, yeah, right. I mean, I do my own mailbox.
I did mine too, but I did it by hand. I did not use.
I didn't know the city was in the business to do them.
They are if they cause the replacement.
If someone requests and we broke it, fair's fair, yeah.
Okay, so. And Alder Henry, you're on the finance committee. If we were to. Approve the budget amount. And the capabilities described by Public Works that they need in these items without specifying a vehicle. Is that something that finance would look at? Or do you want vehicles?
Yeah, but
So
finance,
we wouldn't approve it, we would recommend.
Yeah,
approval. No.
yep, and finance will definitely take a look at this, and I'll just raise some of the things that I know I'll raise because I chair the finance committee. So the total asked for is $620,000, which is $417,795 in excess of the $202,205 that appeared in the 2024 projection that we got when we did the 2023 budget. The $620K will also leave just $280,704 in the fund balance for Public Works. And every year we set aside $525,000. So for all vehicles in the city. So I feel strongly that this is an unreasonable request to be asking for this much. I note that the J hook was described last year, I believe, possibly even in 2021 as a tickler item that shows up occasionally. I'm not sure whether any of these have gone through a life cycle cost analysis, which is something that the sustainable purchasing policy that council passed requires. So, of these, the bottom two, the EV truck and the whole claw, I have no concerns about those. I think it's great to see the Ford F-150 Lightning on there. I think the other two items, the top two, bigger ticket ones, I'm not convinced are good to recommend at this time. It's certainly absent of life cycle cost analysis, and the sustainability committee, one of the highly technically capable members, developed a tool called Falca, which I'd like to see these items go through. I also wonder, didn't we budget for this fiscal year, Sean and Brad? Didn't you get funding for the Ford F-550 with the dump box?
No,
I don't think we did, no.
there may have been a replacement for a different department, but not for the streets department or public works. This is an addition. This isn't a replacement item.
This is an addition, not a replacement item.
Yeah. And I probably should have started with that. So we have three pieces of capital budget requests. One is for streets, one is for everything not streets, and the third one is for new vehicles, but not replacement vehicles, because replacement vehicles is $500,000 sort of annual pot of money. And then our mechanic and Brad work through multiple departments and figure out what our priorities are for that $500,000. This is literally fleet addition stuff, not replacements.
Right, so the Ford F-550 was requested but not funded, correct?
That sounds right.
Because I see it in the
Yeah, that's correct.
projects and funding. It was listed as $95,000 for 23, and now it's 135,000.
Yep. So there's extra things. So this is going to be utilized if it was approved. Instead of us using other departments' stuff for snow and ice fighting, I added in $20,000 for the salt dog. So we could salt our own parking lots and other roads if we have a failure in our other trucks.
Well, again, I'm just not comfortable devoting this much $620,000 for public works when our budget is more like $500,000 for the entire city,
Yeah.
you know?
And my real goal here tonight is to get the committee to re-rank these in priority order as the committee sees fit. This is just in staff order. And then for us to retool this into the format in which it'll actually be submitted on August 18th, so that at the August 14th meeting, the committee can actually reconsider and recommend to the finance committee approval of certain items. So if the committee tonight wants to say, let's not even put something forward, that's fine. Or if they want to re-rank something, that's helpful. But especially on some of the other like street projects and other things, I don't have firm costs yet. And so I don't want to pin myself down into saying, here's how much our best estimate is. But I am pretty concerned with the order because once I put it into the other spreadsheet form that the finance department needs, changing the order is very, very difficult.
Well, if we would rank them tonight, I would put the Lightning EV truck first and the Pole Claw second. Possibly the F-550 is third, and I would defer the J-Hook until 2025, which is what last year's plan showed.
I have a question about Pole Claw. Sean, how many times in any given year would we be renting a crane?
Renting a crane.
Yeah.
Do you know, Brad? I don't, it feels to me like that's usually a 4 or 5 time a year.
If you would have asked me in December, I'd say probably 3 times. This year alone, we think we've rented 7. We've had a lot of issues with vehicles hitting poles.
So we're looking at a 6 to 8 year payback period on this.
Correct.
I don't know why, but it's not letting me put numbers in here right now.
Numbers lock off
Is
or
it,
something?
is it,
I turned that off and then I started just using the top bar numbers. Like, can I put anything in this cell?
So I think it's probably a pretty fair assumption that crane rental costs aren't going to decrease. Whereas there is a chance that EV costs do decrease. So I'd actually be inclined to rank the Pole Claw ahead of the EV truck. And then the F-550 and then the leaf picking J-hook style back truck. Just so that we can realize some cost savings over time and use that. Are there other perspectives?
I don't think it makes a difference whether you put 3 or 4, number 1, because if finance is going to accept something that we recommend, those 2 items, obviously, because of the low value of road.
Yeah.
And then 2 would be the next. I agree with that. And then put number 1 is 4 and cross your fingers.
Yeah, so I am a little frustrated and confused as to why I can't change these numbers, but what I'm hearing from this is that this would be the new number 4.
Yeah.
This would be the new number 3. This would be the new number 2.
1, 2, and then
1 or 2.
yeah.
Either way.
I respectfully request that we make it 1 because I think it's very important.
Okay.
Okay,
And that-
that's fine.
Message, yeah.
3 becomes 1 and number 4 becomes 2. Right? So that's what I'm hearing. This is 1, this is 2.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so tomorrow, when I'm allowed to touch my own spreadsheet,
So can you find out the cost of the 550?
do you know, Brad, is the F-550 electric commercially available in our area? Or
Not an F5, not a Ford F-550, no. They
Or
do make
something.
one-ton
something
trucks
specific.
and electric. They do make one-ton trucks and electric, but the ones I've found are out of state. And I know Ford is developing right now, they're trying to develop a one-ton that's usable in electric. They just don't have it done yet.
but some competitor does.
Yeah, out of state, they do. Atlas has one that actually has an 8-foot box on it. All of them come with, I mean, I'll caveat that with they're all 4-door ones though, so they're extremely large because they have to have the cab on there to support the battery because that's where they put the battery.
Okay,
Is there a problem with it being, the vendor being out of state?
if service is also out of state, that might be a huge problem.
Don't we service our own
Right.
vehicle?
We do, but not electric yet. We don't have a trained tech for that.
Maybe we need to build training in for, into the budget for next year.
Yeah, some anyway.
Especially if we're talking about getting the Lightning EV truck, we're going to need to maintain that. So is there a line item for training our current maintenance staff?
So for the Lightning EV truck, today we picked up the a Mach-E, and if that needs service of something that our mechanics can't handle, it would go right to the Ford dealership just down the road from our shop. Then the same thing would happen with the F-150 Lightning.
Right, but isn't that something that needs to change in our Public Works Department to make sure we have trained staff who can maintain all our vehicles, not just our ICE vehicles?
That would be ideal, and I don't even know what's involved with that, like if their shop stuff becomes different. Yeah, I mean, there are certain things, a car is a car from a certain perspective, but once we get into the powertrain stuff, I don't know enough about.
I mean, you could be looking at a cost here too of 3 times this.
For the larger vehicles, yeah.
Well, that's why the sustainable purchasing policy that council approved and adopted for the city requires a life cycle cost analysis, because it might be more expensive upfront, but if we save on maintenance and parts and fuel
So what's
over life cycle.
what did they say is an appropriate payback?
That is being worked out in the implementation plan, but the tool already exists to compare the two. And it's my understanding the implementation plan is going to direct staff to use this tool that was developed by Dominic Bindle.
Yeah, we've been using a tool like that for 30 years, but
Here,
no, in our businesses.
right, yeah, we don't do that.
But it's, you know,
And what's a good?
but what's the projected minimum payback? Years, number of years. I mean, with that, I mean, a tool will calculate a year payback, but what's the projected minimum?
That's.
I mean, you know,
and
corporate America basically is like 2 years.
we
I
just-
mean, most nonprofits are
Yeah,
anywhere between 10 and 20.
I mean, in my partnership, we look at a 7-year payback is not ideal, but fine. You know, I think that we should really look at what the principle here is. And if we're thinking about electrifying the fleet in any meaningful sense, we are going to need public works staff trained to maintain the electric vehicles. So this is an expenditure that we are going to likely be making in the next few years. I understand that we don't have it as a specific budgeted amount in this request, but it sounds like the finance committee chair is asking us to consider a line item here so that the adding a line item for training our maintenance staff and investing in the people who work for the city of Middleton. So that the finance committee can determine an appropriate initial amount to appropriate for this, if it makes sense to them. And I think we should do that and invest in public works staff.
Okay,
So I'm going to move to add a line item to,
could we push that to the next agenda? Because this is about capital budget and now
Yeah.
we're talking about the
Staff.
operating budgets.
okay, yeah, we'll defer that to the next one, but please do have a line item for that if
Okay.
possible in the next.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would be good guidance for the
Yeah.
next meeting for the operations budget to come to. With a line item for
Working toward training.
training. And in addition to reordering these, again, so the tool, and I've never used it, but the tool takes the life cycle or the life expectancy of the vehicle and compares how much does it cost to have an EV, how much does it cost to use an ICE vehicle? And from the few that I've seen done, the EV is, you don't have to worry about the payback period, it's the lifetime of the piece of equipment. But because the fuel costs and the maintenance costs are so much lower, it makes up for the higher purchase price.
But if, yeah, and except if you're talking about something that's as custom. I mean, yeah, this is a different deal than the F-150 electric.
Sure.
This is a custom vehicle.
Are you talking about the F?
So that's why I was wondering if we know have any idea what the order of magnitude price is.
So I think what I'm hearing here is we're generally agreed on the ordering of the F-150 and the cylinder pull claw. The discussion is for the F-550 and the J-hook style leaf picking vac truck, which are ordered 3 and 4 in the revised priority ordering. Is whether or not we go with an electric option or whether we go with the specified internal combustion option for these. And it, again, might make sense to appropriate the amount and the capabilities and leave it to city staff who are vehicle specialists to determine what ultimately makes the most sense, but with the understanding that finance is not going to approve these.
Yeah, I was gonna say appropriating the $365,000 in addition to the other 3 pieces of equipment. I just don't see that happening. $620,000 is too much.
So do we want to just remove priorities 3 and 4 then?
Just for.
Just for.
Just 4, okay.
And that would be the J-hook takeout.
Yep.
All right. And then for the F-550, is there a substantially similar electric model that has the same capabilities and the same maintenance schedule? And if there is one in that cost bracket, but realistically, it's probably not getting past finance either way.
It depends.
Okay,
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is this Balka tool is available and we know how
Yep.
to use it.
Yep, Brad has worked with Dominic Bindle. I don't think he's still on the sustainability committee, but he's the one who developed it, and I think he's going to get it used elsewhere too.
Okay, good. I had heard it was coming. I had not heard it was here. Right. So I don't think we need anything else on this part of the budget at this time. Great, should we just back up to streets?
I
Yeah.
would ask one request for next time too. Can we see the entire 5-year replacement plan? Because I know there is a 5-year replacement plan for public works.
Well, number one, I don't have that, but usually that's actually bypasses any given committee.
Right.
We used to do that at each individual committee, and then we would hand finance committee each of our little pieces. And nobody would know what the highest and best priority across the city is. And that's why we went to this other system where Brian Gebhardt, our chief mechanic, and Brad, who works with all the departments, and Bill Burns get together and work out a replacement plan across all of them. So they will have that, but I won't have that. And I don't think any other department head champions.
Okay, so the vehicle replacement plan is not, even though it's broken down by department in the budget,
Right.
it is not available by department to us. Even
I
though
think
we
it's
get-
all one big plan. And yeah, we have placeholders for which department any given piece of equipment is in, but they're not trying to make recommendations based on everybody gets something, or boy, police get whatever they want and Public Works has second dibs and Parks might get something maybe. They don't look at it that way. Kind of was how we used to.
I'll ask Bill.
Yeah. Bill and Brad and Brian work on that.
Okay, so now let's move to streets.
Okay, so this is laid out just at a high level. Some of these numbers are going to change in the next few weeks. But just in priority order, we put the two TIF projects up top. Mostly because they're a different funding source and already underway. The rest of them are all in general fund. And Sean Alsrud and I went through our 5-year plan just to pick up on what we're intending to construct based on the 5-year plan and what we're intending to design for 2025 based on that plan. And again, the costs may change some, but we laid out this 14 line request. And anything's fair game or discussion for prioritization or modification.
It's the total. Without the top two. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 2.3 million, I'll say.
And what was it last year?
Our budget goal is 2 million.
Okay.
So Sean, I'll just mention some of the descriptions are cut off in the table that's in our packet. It's not a
Yeah.
huge thing, but just so you remember if you're using, because I see it now, but it's truncated.
Yeah, the PDF conversion.
I have a question about several of these. So Pleasant View Road reconstruction and Parmenter Street reconstruction. These were funded in 2023. So is the $10,700,000 requested in addition to the 14.5 million that we appropriated in 2023?
Well,
Or is that what's going to be remaining of the 14.5 and you'll need it for 2024?
Part of it is I don't know where we'll end the actual 2023 expenditures, but it seems that when I've been dealing with TIF funding, it doesn't automatically carry over like a lot of the capital budget stuff does. So whatever we don't spend in 2023, we better have asked for in 2024. And that gets a little bit tough to figure out. So that's at a high level, the answer. And so at a different level, I think that this isn't totally in addition to the $14.5 million, right? But I have to take a best guess within the next few weeks of where do I think I'll end up this year? So I can try to appropriate the right amount of money next year, but it's not going to change the bottom line dollar figure of what this thing costs because that contract's been.
Same thing for Parmenter Street reconstruction.
Yeah, that's a little bit more clear because we only appropriated this year for design and real estate work, but nothing for construction. So this should just be a construction number.
Okay, then when you do the, and I know the capital project request form is changing or has changed.
Yeah.
I would just encourage you to make it clear what as for these multi-year projects or projects that are carrying over, what the total, so it doesn't look like we're going to be paying 25 $26 million. For
Yeah,
Parmenter Street.
I do expect that number to change a lot. And this one probably a little.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2023 approved capital budget items, and Parmenter reconstruction was funded at $4.6 million.
Oh, I thought that was into future years.
Going up in 2023.
Or was that for what area of Pond?
It says
It's north
North
end.
Century.
Okay, north.
Yeah.
North
Century.
Yeah. That's odd. I think at one point we were hoping to build it in 23, but that ship has long since sailed.
That's what I remember that for my first public works committee meeting. Okay, so Mound Drive,
Not too far. Yes.
okay, so what does it mean to designate a buffer area around the effigy mound? Aren't we required to preserve effigy mounds, or is this just a reference to like installing some educational signage?
It
What are we talking?
might be a little bit of both, but we had a long talk last fall with a state representative, and part of the effigy mound actually gets into the public right of way. So we were talking about, well, then let's make sure that we don't design anything in that part of the right of way, even though it's intended for road purposes. It's also intended for effigy mound purposes at this point. And they were saying really their preference would be to designate and record some sort of buffer zone easement so that it's actually on the books that you don't use that part of the right of way.
I would be very supportive of that.
Yeah, it's an irreplaceable part of our heritage.
Right. The water main can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for from us is,
Mostly if you have a different priority level
yeah,
or think there's something on here well, I don't know, I think it's into the 5-year plan, but I would encourage re-ranking these things if you think something's out of order.
Actually had a question about the Clark and Lee Street reconstruction. Since we are adding sidewalks, is it possible to add, and forgive me if this is the trail, the asphalt pavement were mentioned, but is it possible to add an off the street bicycle lane during this reconstruction, either by bumping out a terrace and including the lane inside of the terrace, or by widening the sidewalk slightly so that we can have a bike lane there?
We had a really hard time designing a 5-foot sidewalk in this right of way. It jogs around, in fact, it's so difficult. We couldn't get a straight line. So that would be difficult at best.
Okay.
Well, I would support what Charles is, I mean, especially since this is the school is right there.
Yeah.
I think it's important to find a way to make it happen. Is there going to be parking, for example? Could we do one of the new designs where there's the parking is not curbside?
It's
Set out from the curb so that you can have the bikes going curbside and be protected from cars.
yeah.
Oh, to stripe a bike lane out in the street?
Yeah, we could do that too.
Oh, I thought you were talking about an off-road path. I'm sorry.
That was definitely an option, but it sounds like maybe there is some easement issues there and we can resolve it. Or excuse me, some width issues. It's hour 2 of the meeting. Please forgive me for, because it sounds like maybe since we're redoing the street anyway, maybe we reconsider parking like Alder Hanaro suggested, and we bump the parking outside of the bike lane. Because
Could do like Parmenter Street has that.
exactly, yeah.
Lee Street would be difficult near Parmenter, because that's striped for 3 traffic lanes. There is no parking there to get rid of.
Yeah,
And they're pretty narrow streets in pretty narrow right of way. Once we get east of where it's 3 lanes, we might be able to get some bike lanes in there in lieu of parking. Clark is sort of in the same boat. It's 50-foot wide instead of 66 feet wide. So real estate's limited.
yeah, so I mean, the reason I'm bringing it up in this specific way rather than just bike lanes is I think one of the things that we can really do for the safety of cyclists and motorists on the roads is, whenever possible, design our bike lanes so that they are shielded from traffic by a physical barrier. That way, what we're doing is in effect making vehicle bike collisions something that only happens when someone's done something really wrong, at least on those streets. It's something that I've seen in other cities that have much more built out bicycle infrastructure than us, just as a general safety thing, because it moves the potential for collisions between vehicles and cars to a really small number of cases. Whereas, you know, we've all driven on Century Avenue late at night, and there's always been, at least when I live on Century Avenue, at least when I drive on Century Avenue late at night, I frequently see cyclists, and usually they have the blinking rear light, but I've counted at least 2 occasions where they have been wearing whatever you might wear normally during the day. It is not reflective. It's dangerous for them. It's dangerous for me as a driver. So if there's a way, when we're looking at other streets, to design around just that human factor of, I need to get home from work and I didn't wear my reflective jacket this morning, or I didn't pack it. I think that's probably going to be safer for the cyclists, and it's something that we should really reevaluate when we're looking at reconstructing a street. If there's a way to do it that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that on-street bike lanes are real safe. So Mineral, you could try, I've driven Mineral Point Road for years, and the bike lane, which is also a bus lane, is used as a passing lane more often than not. And I followed a Middleton squad car down Park Street from University down across the tracks, and that squad car drove almost the whole way with their wheels in the bike lane. I mean, it's pretty typical of what I see that people drive in the bike lanes.
So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking for ways that we can physically separate the bike lane. It'll protect cyclists from human error. It'll protect motorists from human error.
Yeah, and Clark and Lee in particular is already designed within the curb lines. If we want to restripe and reallocate parts of that pavement for something, we certainly can. If we want to start over with design, that's a different budget request than construction. That would be fine with me, but it would take this off the board and put design back on the board.
I would be okay with that. I mean, it's a 2-year-old design. Was it designed in 2021 or was it designed approved in 2021?
I can't recall when we started. It's been a while and it's been sitting on the shelf. Partly because it's, I mean, Park Street's been a little bit up in the air with construction of the apartments over there on the west side. And then work at the high school. And so we didn't want to conflict with all of that. That's all kind of stabilized now. So we thought, well, now is as good a time as any to actually build this.
So we have it pretty far down on the priority list already this year. So maybe we push it further down on the priority list for the purposes of redesigning it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair,
Yeah.
we can redesign it, but I don't even know if we could add a separated bike lane from the rest of the through traffic. I'm not sure that in a 50-foot right of way, we can meaningfully pull that off. Maybe.
Well, last year we approved 11 projects for $21.4 million. Just under streets,
Can we
just for
put
context.
that on an agenda to look at the drawings?
Well, that's
Yeah, let's,
But
okay,
you're talking curb, bike lane, parking, to 12-foot lanes or 10-foot lanes on those streets.
They could be 10s.
Was on the other side, just a curb.
Guess you'd want a bike lane.
Addison just did that on Bassett.
Did they?
Took a while for people to get used to it, but I think it's working.
Oh, Bill Putnam probably had his fingers in there. So I mean, if it, you got 24 for the cars, you got a bike lane that's 8 feet, 10 feet.
Bike lane can be like 5 if you're next to curb.
5 parking.
Yeah, that's got to be 8.
So we got 13 and 24. Yeah, you could put a bike lane on the other side of the road and no parking. Could probably work.
And you'd want something to separate that too, I assume.
You might. Just another curb,
It would seem odd to separate one
Yeah.
side and not the other.
not the
side.
other.
if we can't fit all of this, we could also add a small, like a 2-foot median. Add a little grass or something in the middle and just have, curb, grass, curb, bike lane in between the terrace.
Yeah, I've seen that more in counter-directional bike lanes where they physically need to separate the bike lane from the vehicle lane with some physical separator. But it does limit where the bike lanes, bicyclists can turn in and out of driveways or whatever.
Yeah,
They have to go to an intersection to join that bike lane then.
Well, you also have, like you said, driveways. That have to go across that and cross then 2 essentially curb lines.
That gets.
That gets
Yeah.
tough and a challenge. I mean, you maybe. You're up to 45 feet. With no parking on one side. You start to add parking on the other side, like you said, to protect the cars or the bikes. Then all of a sudden you're taking away terrace.
Well, the whole right of way is 50 feet.
Oh, the whole right of way is 50 feet, including the
That's what I'm
sidewalk.
saying. Right, the right of way, everything, yeah. It's
Can't
not a
be done.
66-foot right of way.
Can't be done.
We're planted at 50.
If you're at 45 already and
Right.
your sidewalks are 5, that's 55. Can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, even what we have was difficult. I'm willing to look at it.
Sean, can you explain how far east on Lee Street? How far east does Lee Street proper go before it becomes? High school?
It goes to the depth of that first lot on the south side of the road. If you're familiar with Fairground, it has that chain link fence. That is the end of Lee Street. Everything past there is a drive.
Well, I think it's worth bumping this one down in priority so that we can consider seeing what can be done to improve bike safety in this area, especially like I said, the schools are there.
So we should then plan not to put in for construction.
Down to the end.
Well, why don't we just take it off the list? If we're not planning to,
Okay.
we don't need any.
Budget anyway.
Might need redesign money.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't take it off the list so much as bump it down and indicate we're thinking.
Oh,
You have 14 projects on here for over, 18,000 or 18 million, sorry. I had a question about Century and Allen. So shouldn't all the work at Century and Allen be done in concert? I saw that there's, where is it? Maybe I've moved into the, I think I've jumped into others, so let's not.
Oh,
that one yet.
because yeah, we were asking for budgeted for traffic signal work.
I will note, and again, so I look at this and I think about all the times I had to apply for federal funding. You have to indicate what congressional districts are going to be affected by this request. And if I look at the city, the Alder districts, there are two that don't have any projects planned. One is 7, one is 8, and then mine only has one, and that's the intersection at High Road and Bellefontaine Boulevard because of the development that's going in Red Tail Ridge. Districts 3 and 1 have a bunch, and 2 have a bunch of stuff. So I'm just wondering, is there ever any consideration given to, like, why is District 8 not getting anything?
We used to look at it that way, more like, hey, let's spread things around and make sure everybody gets something. Maybe not every year, but maybe the next year they get something extra. Our rationale more now for budgeting has been, we have a whole points matrix based on pavement condition and traffic volume. There's some proximity valuation to that, so that if 2 roads are right near each other, we don't want to do one year and one the next year, because we're like, if we're going to hassle people, let's get in and get out. So we have a list of, I want to say it's maybe 10 different criteria that we go through. And that's what drives our proposed 5-year plan. And then it goes through several committees to finally be adopted. But it's not one of our criteria anymore to worry about where in the city it is, as much as what is it trying to do and what condition is it in.
I would suggest it's still useful information to have to show what districts are affected by projects when it is a particular district. Also, I'm mindful of the need to address the Old Creek Road neighborhood traffic management plan, the application that was submitted. So I'm wondering, where does that fall? They submitted that in December 22.
Yeah, so we got traffic, or we're in the process of getting traffic counts. We were already pretty backed up on other traffic count stuff. So we got the equipment freed up and we're out there collecting traffic data. I don't yet have that.
Is that something that could be included in the 2024, since you're getting the data now? Could action on their request be part of 2024? Because I know Alder Lorman and myself were both, Old Creek goes through our 2 districts.
Yeah, well, we've tended not to do hire consultants for these kinds of things. We've tended to try to fit it in with our existing staff. But
Sure.
we could certainly hire a consultant instead to follow the process.
Well, I'm thinking of the requests they made for things like a speed bump. And
Oh, yeah. So the process is that we collect the data, we try to confirm the nature of the problem, we brainstorm some potential solutions to the problem, and then go to the neighborhood for a vote. And if it passes the neighborhood vote, then we budget for implementation.
So
We
when-
haven't tended to just jump the gun and say, hey, let's go build speed humps because someone asked.
So when are you planning to reconnect with the neighbors on Old Creek Road to take the next step?
Yeah, so I said, once we have the data downloaded and figure out what it looks like, that's what we wanted to share with them next. I think we're pretty close to that.
And is anybody communicating this to the residents who put forward the application?
Stephanie had checked in with me not so long ago, and I let her know that we were finally collecting that data. So she should know that.
Right. I guess I think it's important, especially since recent events mean we need to do a better job building trust now, or rebuilding trust with our public. I think it's important that lines of communication remain open and both ways, not just residents having to inquire where do things stand. I think it's an important step for the city to be reaching out to engaged neighbors who've made a request like that, to let them know. Still working on it. Here's the.
I would love that. And I swear to you, Lisa, I come in early, I stay late.
We believe you.
I am physically not able to do what I want to be able to do. It just can't, I can't do that. Maybe somebody can, but that's somebody is not me.
Okay.
And it's not for lack of trying. So I would love to be proactive and walk somebody through a process. We're not at that level.
Understood. I would respectfully request that someone on your staff be delegated the authority to do that outreach, because I don't expect it to come from you, Sean. You're the director of the department.
So most of my people have limited hours. They cannot come in early. They cannot stay late. They cannot work Saturday. You know, and so I have people working as hard as they can in the hours I have available to assign them to tasks, but they can't keep up and be as proactive as we want to either. We've asked for, you know, some limited help specifically for traffic issues, because people seem to care deeply about traffic issues. And it's one of the things that, unless we have a known crash problem, we have a very difficult time prioritizing that above something else that the council has assigned to us. You know, so it tends to languish a bit. I don't know what to do about that. If I make that priority once, something else has to fall off the board. It just has to, because these other people are busy too.
Just in terms of looking forward to, I mean, there's the long-term structural issue of hours, but is there a way to offload some of this communication to the city's communication department?
Well, we'd have to tell him then what's going on and what message to convey to a resident, at which point we could convey the message to the resident. The hard part is keeping all the balls in the air and saying, you know, let me figure out what's happening on this project and this project and this, and who do I need to tell about every little step about every given project. And I'm just telling you, we used to be able to do a better job of that than we are able to do.
Yeah, the sort of my thought process in bringing it up this way is that I don't know what task management software Middleton uses. Perhaps we don't use any.
We do not.
But if we were using, and this is, you know, a broader long-term structural issue that we can absolutely put forward as a future agenda item, not to skip forward, but I'd love for us to discuss that at a noticed meeting so that we can see if there's a way, because if we're using a tracking software like Asana or something else, there's a way for the communications department to see where things are without you having to tell them.
That's a great in concept. Then the communications department comes back to him with 10 more questions. That then his staff has to take the time out of their day, handle those, and then again, the other balls get dropped.
Right. So this is why
So
I'm
your
saying,
process really doesn't address that.
and I'm thinking as a committee, maybe we discuss it at a future meeting and see if there's a, you know, we workshop it, we see if there's a way that we can recommend it. Because I think the consensus that we have here is that Sean works 6 days a week and works until 9 o'clock and change.
But the rest of the staff is.
And the rest of the staff, yeah, and the rest of the staff can't. And so
So if we're not getting more hours, we have to get more efficient, or we have to do less stuff.
yeah, so I'm looking at maybe a way to explore efficiencies in communication. And I think
I'm
that's
certainly open to that.
Yeah.
If there's a
The
better
task
way to do
management software would take a lot more manpower to do. I've done it for 50 years.
Oh. Well, then I'm not excited.
One of the things in our strategic plan for the city, goal 6, or whatever section this is develop a comprehensive technology plan for all city operations. Or that's an action. The goal is to use technology to improve efficiency and cost effectiveness of city services. That's on the administration, and it's a 3 to 5 year time frame. So I think in conjunction with that effort, this is a question to explore, because,
Yeah.
you know, I know this because we talked a lot about how to use technology, some of which we already have, but also investments in new technology to engage the public better and inform them better and improve city operations.
Yeah, so I apologize for bringing this item up out of order on the agenda because there are items for future
Mhm.
consideration as an agenda item, so maybe
Yeah.
we should,
Can we get back on point?
yeah, let's get back on.
I mean, we have now spent,
Yeah.
what, 15, 20,
Yeah.
30 minutes on this?
So,
and it's not an agenda.
Well, it was related to my request
Yeah.
to see this show up in the public works budget for next year, but it sounds like it's built in, it's in the budget, just not enumerated because it's something that is on Sean's list of things to do under operations.
So I heard number 6, we can reduce the value, lower its prioritization and reinvestigate. Design.
Yeah,
Okay. And lower, is there a specific spot lower than?
Well, considering it's up there for reconstruction, if we lower it further, that's automatically getting kicked into 2025.
Well,
So what we don't want it to do is they're gonna say, okay, we're gonna approve 1 through 10, and it's 11. Because we want it studied now so it can be reconstructed in 2025.
yeah, do we want to keep?
So we really don't want to lower the priority, but leave it where it is and just lower the value.
Yeah, and yeah, that makes a lot more sense
okay.
to do it that way.
Remember, you lower the value and these guys are gonna take the bottom ones and lop them off.
Sometimes we take the middle ones too. I had a question about the Elmwood resurfacing from Parmenter to Bristol. This is number 10 right now. So the city budget is $170,000 for this. But if I look at the approved capital budget for 2023, this project is on there. Elmwood resurfacing, Parmenter to Bristol, and the cost was $6,000.
Oh, that was for the soil borings for design purposes.
Okay, it says construction.
Interesting. That would have been for design.
All right, just checking. Thought that was.
That's a pretty
quite-
typical number for us to go get.
Quite a
soil
jump.
information. Yeah.
I didn't have any more on the streets. I do have questions on the other.
And no preference for any different prioritization than this then?
Well. I would say the 2025 soil testing for resurfacing, I wouldn't want to see that get lopped off. It has to take place.
That's 9. And the one I would be concerned about is the uproar of the 3 citizens who live on Elmwood who are complaining about speed bumps that aren't there, being down at 11,
Oh. Yeah, this one.
3+. But yeah,
This one would be proposed to hire a consultant to do this one.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't envision us fitting it into staff.
okay.
It's, I mean, we have gone round and round and round on this and gotten nowhere so far.
Okay,
Well, but number 10. That one says this will complete the majority of recent roadway improvements of the Elmwood Avenue corridor. Shouldn't that be higher in priority then? So we can finish that off.
The resurfacing or what?
Yeah, I'm just looking at what's highlighted there and what it says.
Yeah. Higher than what? Where should we move it?
Well, since I consider that sort of a work already in progress, I guess I would put it right after the street surface treatments number 3.
So move number 10 to become number 4.
Oh, that was.
Okay. this Lake Dewey reconstruction number is an old number when there was no lakeshore park-like improvements contemplated. So the recent concept design now is going to change this number quite a bit, I think. In fact, our design number is going to be pretty far wrong. It's envisioned more as just a typical street resurfacing with new water.
Yeah, I would be okay with bumping this down if it weren't for the fact that it's the water main replacement that was driving.
And in a large apartment complex.
And it might be that at some point we just decided, let's Harris an area and put the park-like design development off of it. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else on screens, we can go to other.
Sean, if you could just, because I know that other committees, look at our discussions here and council does as well. If you could just explain Fly Dane and the benefits of that program, since it's number one on the list.
Yeah, and so Dane County Land Information Office reaches out to area communities to develop a consortium of interest in getting aerial photography. And sometimes LiDAR data too. So it's this helps with a lot of their contour and the data-driven end of contours, not just lines on a map. I think they're not doing LiDAR this year, but they would get renewed aerial coverage. And I think this is, 3-inch resolution. So it's really high quality imagery. They put that on the Dane County website, and we then also get permission to put that on the city's website. So our GIS system, their GIS system, it's high quality imagery that we can zoom in on pretty well. Most people find that it's handy that they can spatially relate things better with imagery in the background than a bunch of right-of-way and property lines. And then they have to kind of guess where their house and driveway is in relation to a water main. Whereas if we can pull this up, we can just show them. Dane County does much the same thing. We can share this with our consultants for their designing of our projects as well. So pretty much actually, Charles, most of what you see behind you is because we participate in Fly Dane. And then our consultants can use that imagery to develop planning documents for us. Awesome. For $8,000, it's a steal. If we don't partner with Dane County, it would be cost prohibitive.
Yeah, some of the feedback that I've gotten is that occasionally there are some things that we are out. It's not immediately clear to other bodies why. So I just wanted to make sure that was immediately clear.
Yeah, this is every other year. Some years it's just not there, but when it is, we try to make it a pretty high priority. It used to cost us quite a lot more than that. The pricing has really come down.
Shouldn't 3 and 4 be combined? It's all one intersection.
Yeah, that was the thing I was jumping to, Don, when I realized, oh wait, this is another thing.
Or one begets the other. Actually, you have to do 3 before you can do 4. Because the analysis of the whole intersection and area is going to dictate what kind of signal modifications you're going to want to make. It does affect that budget possibly.
Yeah, I could see that. This started life as 2 different things on 2 different tracks. They certainly will have 2 different
Combine them.
Let's hope they don't do 4 before they do 3.
So one is literally just design, and then the other one is, can we get that signal stuff in?
Yeah, but I mean, I really think that once you do the design and concept, you may think, well, we really, other than maybe some timing functions, don't have to do 4 until we complete the construction.
Yeah, we could. I mean, we'll just be running two separate sub projects, but it would be one budget number.
Yeah. And they're part and parcel to each other. I mean, you can leave it the way it is, but somebody else is gonna ask the question, how can you do 4 without knowing what you're doing in 3? It's like putting in a sewer and then digging up the, well, it's. Or the lovely green way coming from Egg Hall down to University Avenue that's dug up every other week.
Well, the controller was more about replacing the box and the conduit. But moving the signal bases was part of the intersection redesign.
Yeah, which
So we
will
just wanted
affect
to get the box.
That box might move, you know, I mean,
It might.
yeah,
Yeah, it's conceivable. So, yeah, I'm not opposed.
okay.
So combine 3 and
We
4.
leave the numbers the way they are because they're
Mhm.
at this point a guess. Unless you have an actual proposal for 3.
No.
Okay.
All right.
I had a question about this streetlight poles, replacing the steel ones with aluminum ones. So this is a multi-year project, correct? It started in downtown or with funding for downtown this year.
Yeah, I think we actually got TIF money for the downtown ones this year,
Okay.
but TIF was not eligible for the University Avenue ones.
Sure.
So we didn't
That's-
do it. But it's the same idea. We've got rusty steel poles.
And when you replace, so you're working on the downtown ones or they're done?
I think Tom is actually working on them. I don't think they're done.
And the replacement of the poles, are you using that as an opportunity to replace the fixtures and the lamps as well?
Yeah, so they'll be upgraded to our LED fixtures.
Yeah. The University Avenue wanted our MG&E fixed.
I believe so. I think those are their Cobra heads.
But they're pretty much on the same fixture that we are.
They are. That's why we
Yeah.
picked ours, so that we could just match theirs.
Right.
I think the surveillance cameras at the mock, a good investment.
Line item 5.
Okay, yeah.
And I
Is
know-
life cycle cost on copiers really cheaper to buy than it is to lease?
Actually, these are just placeholders.
Okay,
I don't have solid figures.
okay.
Well, and I know the last year's budget. We replaced the city hall mailroom copier and that was a purchase.
One upstairs here.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
well, I mean, I don't know if they did it yet or not, but they got $10,450 to replace the mailroom copier. And that was not, I was just looking at the capital request now, it was definitely purchase, not a new lease. It seems to me. City probably should have a policy or, like every department should do it the same because
That'd be nice.
yeah, I can't imagine it makes sense not to. But so if it is more economical to purchase instead of lease. That's,
And if we are going to purchase, we should probably look at what the mailroom purchased and keep it with the same vendor. Because otherwise we're doing multiple service systems on copiers when there's an issue on that.
Yeah, I don't know what they even have. I rarely come up here for copying.
and I can mention that to Bill Harms. Because you're right, that's, yeah. Also, I think I've asked him before, do we take part in any of the state purchasing opportunities? And I don't think we do, but yours might be.
I have bought stuff through that.
Yeah.
It had a different name. They changed it to something else, but yeah, then it was sort of pre-competitively bid and we could just buy stuff using.
Yeah.
So I had a question about line item number 8. Epoxy coating on vehicle wash bay walls.
Yeah.
How deteriorated is the epoxy currently? Because if it's an issue, fixing the spalling is infinitely more expensive than the epoxy. So if it's at a point where it has reached the end of its useful life, I think we should move that one up, because otherwise we're going to be back with this budget item in a year or two, and we'll be dealing with concrete spalling instead.
Are you?
I can tell you it's getting towards the end of its useful life.
I know
on
we
the
had
lower half
it
of
last
the,
year, but couldn't swing it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd request that we move that up in to number 5. Or that the finance committee please spend that, because this is just so much cheaper than fixing concrete.
And there was an epoxy coating put on the floor of the recycling center this year.
It's budgeted and Brad got a quote. We have not yet scheduled it. I think that's going to be in fall.
There. And then the replacement of the overhead doors, that was taken out of the budget last year.
Right, yeah. And I know Brad mentioned he has to get different updated pricing on this because this was last year's figure. And we talked at one point about at least doing the east door, which is all the main traffic goes in that door. We have 2 doors to go out. But it's a somewhat bigger door. And you're working on that, I take it then, Brad, to get updated pricing?
yeah, waiting for Northland Doors to get back to me with a number.
That's what I thought.
And then I thought we typically budget every year for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon to be installed. Is that in this list? And I just didn't see it.
It's not, yeah, we don't put one a year in or anything, but usually if the police or an alder or even a resident suggests something that we could justify, then we put it in. I haven't heard from anybody this year about where people would really benefit from it. So the council could add it, the committee could add it, but I haven't heard from anybody.
I think it's a good idea to build that into the budget, and then the council members can amongst themselves decide where to put it. Because I know I can think of a couple places in my own district where people have asked for one. Gaylord Nelson Drive crossing Pheasant Branch at the Conservancy, which gets super busy especially in the summertime. We're putting the new sidewalk in, so that crossing might be a place. Yeah, I'm sure each of us, all 8 of us, could think of places in our districts where we would benefit from having one. So I like the idea of trying to build one into the budget every year so that we have that opportunity.
Okay. So we just put that in every year, location to be decided by somebody. Councilors. All right.
To future year projects, unless anyone's. Okay, update of TIA guidelines. I think if I'm remembering things correctly, about 2 months ago, we actually had in relation to one of the traffic impact analysis with Red Tail Ridge, we had the age of the TIA guidelines come up. And I assume we're going to have this in the future. Is there a way to move this from future year to 24 capital year, or do you think it's not necessary?
Well, I didn't get fee for this, and I don't know how to come up with a price, because I don't know what the scope would be. I mean, I heard it's out of date, but I didn't hear what about it we would like to change. So I think more discussion about what I would be asking would determine its price.
Okay. Yeah, let's,
Is it typical for guidelines like this to be updated? But every 20 years?
I
Yeah.
I don't have any experience with this kind of thing. I mean, normal planning documents, we try to update much more frequently. This one's more like a standards kind of book. And so I suspect that would be the first question from a consultant is, well, what about your guidelines would you like to change or augment, whatever? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm comfortable with this being a 2025 activity. Only because I think we have some other plans, like the comprehensive plan is going to be updated. The plan is to get it updated this year, but
Okay,
knows, you know,
all right.
I would like to suggest, and I had this on my list of things to suggest for a future meeting agenda.
Yeah.
I would love to see High Road reconstruction be on this list somewhere.
Well, in the 5-year plan, I mean, that's the place to put it, right? Yeah, it's not necessarily on this list, but the 5-year plan, it's got all the streets.
Mhm.
So maybe.
And we
it's-
usually review that in the spring.
Right, so maybe I'm suggesting that we put this on future meeting agenda items. Because the town of Springfield, which we're trying to, you know, maintain and develop a good working relationship with the town of Springfield. And we have a new development going in, and a lot of people are concerned about why High Road looks the way it does north of.
Yeah, so let's add that to the discussion we're gonna have in hopefully at less than 5 minutes about future meeting
Great.
items.
Yeah.
And then the last, I had one question about the pedestrian connection around Tiedemann Pond. Is there, the note says, yeah, the note says none of these options would result in a handicap accessible pedestrian route.
There is an
Yeah.
existing one
Yeah,
at the south end, southeast end.
but if we're looking at these options, is there just no way to do that here? Or are we,
Well, it's getting down to the boardwalk that becomes the
Yeah,
hassle.
right.
Because the street's not changing and the boardwalk.
It's really
changing, so
Yeah.
stairs to get there.
I had a laugh about this one because frankly, I wrote an email to Gurdeep when he was still an older person about this same issue and never heard back.
Oh, yeah, he brought it up with me every couple of years, so I just kept my notes and it just sort of kept on the tickler list. but we
Previous
never
mayor brought it
funded
up to me at a job interview for this position. What do you think we should do there, Don?
Carl, you might be the citizen whose request it was, it's just.
Yeah, that's it. You're the one.
Specify which
You're the
June it
guy.
was.
Can I just throw that Allen Lake traffic signal feasibility up into that whole Allen
Yeah. I just
Century
noticed that too.
Avenue intersection stuff and being done next year?
Oh,
yeah,
I mean, that is, you know, poor Starbucks is gonna starve because nobody's gonna want to go in there because they can't get out, as they already do. And then with the apartment complex and the athletic field or athletic facility, and God forbid McDonald's would starve out. But yeah, I honestly think that could be a part of that whole project. As long as they're studying the intersection.
There's even a connection to the Century Avenue Road diet. Yeah, I mean, it's all a
Well,
system,
no, that's the resurfacing of the road, but I mean.
not the road diet study,
that's,
that's changing.
yeah, and that one was gonna be mostly restriping, so I wasn't as concerned with it. It's just the county wasn't willing to restripe it unless somebody does a study first.
Right,
Says it's okay. they're not gonna repave it till 26 at this.
Okay.
One more agenda item.
Yeah. So
And it's not adjourned.
it's future meeting agenda items, discussion, possible action.
What about
We still have
Oh, brush, you're right, yeah. Um,
Anybody have a comment? I mean, do we need to make a motion on this?
I was gonna say, I moved that we punt this to next time.
If we want to change it, we would need a motion and
Okay.
I can tell you right
I make a
now-
motion that we change the brush memo in accordance with the proposal.
I think I already had made a motion.
yeah.
Sorry, Carl,
Yeah, there was a motion on the table to defer consideration
till next time.
of agenda item number 4 to our next meeting.
Well, then it'll be at 10 o'clock based on what the potential agenda is for.
Pretty busy agenda, yeah.
All right, I withdraw my motion, but I will say before Carl restates his motion, I do have some things to request about this.
Okay, Carl, would you be willing to withdraw your motion so that we can just have discussion on it? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple of thoughts about this. One, I don't use our brush collecting services, although maybe I will. I do not think saying it's limited to 1 truckload of chip wood, approximately 7 cubic yards per month, is going to mean anything to the average person. I think it would be much more helpful to have, this is just my thought, a picture saying this is acceptable, this is not, with something in there for scale. I'm also not clear on the 1 truckload of chip wood per month means. Does that mean I can put out enough, that as much as a whole truckload of,
It
You know-
would mean that,
because
yeah.
that's asking a lot.
How many times have they had to pick up more than 70 cubic yards? I mean, that's a lot.
Do you know, Brad, how many
That is a
times
lot.
a year we run into? that?
Yeah, this probably happens 6 times a year.
Same person?
No, well, one person, yes, but generally, no, it's not the same people. But this is just basically so we can monitor any land clearing activities, so we're not constantly chipping up brush for a contractor that comes in. We don't catch them in there and they clear a bunch of stuff out. They just put it on the side of the road.
Well,
We
that leads
ran
me,
into this earlier this year.
that leads me to another question I had, Brad, and that is, what do we require the brush to be placed in the homeowner's own terrace or the property owner's terrace? Because I know in my neighborhood, I live on Whittlesey, and people put stuff at the park. And I don't like that idea because it seems like it should be in their front yard. Otherwise.
It's
it
supposed to
makes-
be in their front yard. Yes,
Okay.
in the right of.
On
Then,
the terrace.
then this memo probably should, well, definitely should state that. And make a reference to the ordinance, because
That's what
I,
I'm wondering is if there's an ordinance already about that, because otherwise we'd have to rate that up for your garbage carts. You can't put them next to somebody else's land or leaves. It's like every policy would have to tell people to be normal.
right, which is unfortunate, but that's, I mean, Brad, I think Brad knows my street because there's a lot of dumping that goes on in the back across the drainage way path.
Yes.
That's not, it's not their property, it's not really anybody's property right now, but it's
The hard part,
not cool.
chasing down, yeah, who did?
Right, well,
this?
that's why if it's required that you have to put if it is a city requirement that it's gotta be in your own terrace, this memo should say that.
But
It
then
It
if they
says here,
don't, what do
material
we
for
do?
collection must be placed on the terrace areas within the street right of way.
But it doesn't say your
Say your
terrace.
terrace.
Terrace area.
Extension of your property line.
Yeah, I mean, it
Just
should
add
spell
to
that
a
out,
Simple ad. help the
Yeah, 'cause-
property owner.
right,
You
because
certainly can. I don't know how to enforce it if somebody chooses not. to.
Can't.
I don't know how you.
It's not.
You'd have to do it through permits and you would. not
There's also
get
terraces that aren't
results.
big enough.
right. But I mean, it's important to give guidance to people so that they can follow the spirit of the
Yeah,
ordinance, if not the letter of it.
there's also an issue with
Right.
stacking, like if I were to remove, I have a giant locust tree in my backyard.
Okay.
If I were to remove that locust tree, there would be no way for me to safely stack the segments of wood on my terrace without going into my neighbor's terrace. We'd be looking at
You'd be over 7 cubic yards.
oh, I would be. I would absolutely be
You'd be
above.
violating the
Yeah,
the effect of the ordinance.
Yeah, but if I'm an average homeowner, I'm probably not able to run that calculation.
And you're probably not going to remove a huge locust.
And if you live across the street from a public park or a
And you got
drainage way, you might put your
Yeah,
whole tree in chunks over across the street. And the city would, how is the city going to say, no, we're not gonna pick that up because it might become, I mean, they might be able to sell in that case.
yeah, they'd probably call me and
Right. But I'm just saying, if a lot of people put all their brush in the public park terrace, the city can't tell if it's one person exceeding the 1 truckload limit.
yeah,
Also, Sean, on this, with the section 1 and section 2, I think section 0, instead of background, I would put like in all caps, important, because if I were reading this and it didn't have the underlined red, for the edit, I would go straight to section 1 resident guidelines, and I might skip the first part. So I would totally put the super important stuff in the beginning, and instead of saying background, which people will skip right over, say important, read this first or something like that.
Okay.
And it might be worth mentioning somewhere in this, I'll let Brad phrase it, but something along the lines of, it is not cool to dump things not on your own property.
yeah.
I think we can work with what's there and just
Yeah.
clarify that it has to be on the terrace area within an extension of your property lines. Shouldn't have that. But people shouldn't have to be told that either.
They used to throw it into the conservancy on Diwani, also
Oh, really?
that Oak Savannah.
How did you get people to stop that?
I called the city and I told them who was doing it. And apparently it stopped.
There you go.
It was that person.
For the record, I'm not removing that locust tree. It's 60 years old. It's healthy. The base is enormous, but yeah. Oh, I
And that
just
changes.
Yeah,
Right, so we got a motion now to accept this as modified.
With an additional modification about extension of property lines and an additional change of background to read important.
Yes.
Yeah, instead.
And the possible addition of something to show, I don't know if you can get a picture, but something to show this is okay, this is not.
yeah. And were we going to refer changes to license and ordinance as well, or?
It's not a license or an ordinance, so it's just policy. We've typically set those ourselves.
So you're sure there's nothing in the municipal code that addresses brush collection?
We haven't changed any ordinance and I'm not aware of one that talks about, this
Well, maybe
sort
we
of
could
operating procedure.
move approval of the changes as discussed with referral to LNO if necessary,
Yeah,
Okay.
so that we can, in the meantime, look and see. I'll make that motion if it hasn't already been moved.
Carl probably did, or,
No, I did, but
oh, you withdrew it.
I'll withdraw. She can make the motion. And then I'll second it.
All right, so I move approval of the changes to the brush collection policy as discussed tonight. And Sean can enumerate those later, with referral to LNO if necessary.
All right.
Meaning if we do have an ordinance that
yeah,
needs action. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my motion.
okay, motion's been made, motion has been seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion carries. All right, now moving to future meeting agenda items. So the background for this is that there are some things that I think we all individually have thought, oh, I'd really like to see that discussed. Or things that, as came up tonight with High Road, we should probably consider in a future meeting. There's not always an immediately clear way to discuss these items at a noticed meeting. And this is usually like a for the good of the order item under Robert's rules. But by doing it this way, we're able to keep something of a limit on how long the discussion takes. First, there's the question of frequency. I'd suggested to Sean bi-monthly or quarterly. I'm open to other frequencies depending on the preferences of the committee. But I do feel strongly that we have this periodically, preferably on agendas that are less packed than this one, which is what I said in my original email. Like we could try to find a way, but
and we haven't often run into very packed agendas. Next time notwithstanding, that's fine. I do want to touch base. I think I might have mentioned to you that I wanted to touch base with our city attorney, and I didn't hear anything until this afternoon.
okay.
So I do want to throw that into the mix.
Yeah.
And his best advice was we shouldn't do this with something sort of as a general discussion. Partly because members can't very well prepare for it, but more than that, he was concerned that it could inadvertently lead into what somebody might consider substantive discussion, and that would be out of bounds. So his advice was, we would be better off if any member has a topic of interest to route it to you as chair to determine if or when it gets put on a future agenda, in which case there wouldn't be discussion until it's on an agenda. And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sounds like a good plan.
Well, I appreciate Larry's or Matt's input on that, but I will say that sustainability has had this as an agenda item on their monthly agenda. And sometimes the members will say, I think we should talk about this next time. And here's why. And then the chair has to say, nope. But you're talking about it now. You didn't just throw it up for consideration for a future agenda. So we can't talk about it. And it's, but it's manageable. And if sustainability can do it, I think this group can do it as well. I don't know that it needs to be on every month, but I mean, that is one way that the sustainability committee's meetings, their agendas get populated.
Yeah, I noticed several city committees already include something substantially
I
similar to
mentioned this to
this.
the attorney because this was advice originally from many years ago. And I thought, well, maybe something's changed or maybe my recollection was incorrect. And I said, other committees are doing this. And this is still my advice.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
got to be his advice to be more conservative, but as long as the chair, can nip it in the bud. And as long as the members recognize these are things I would take, well, if the discussion / possible action is in reference to this very specific agenda item that we're talking about right now, that's okay. But in the future, it would just be
Discussion.
Yeah.
And my
And
understanding.
not even really discussion.
Yeah.
I would look at how sustainable.
Yeah, so.
And it's difficult to take action without consideration, like discussion, but
Plus, are you
what
gonna
would be the
allow
end result to say, yes, let's put that on a future agenda?
public input? You gonna allow public input for this? That's where you're really opening up a can of worms.
So typically I do recognize people on agenda items if they have a specific thing that they want to talk about that is on the agenda. And provided that the requests conform to suggesting topics.
For all practical purposes, that citizen should go to their alder will then go to Public Works to have the item added to the agenda. They should not come directly to us, in my mind. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here until midnight.
And if it's an idea you don't want on a future agenda, you'd have to tactfully say, well, thank you for your input. We'll take this under consideration or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's gonna be the response to all of them. So,
And so I think part of what the attorney was thinking too was, if it's an idea that doesn't merit maybe committee consideration, it would go to you and die there.
yeah,
Well, but having it brought up at a committee meeting puts it on your list of things to consider for future meetings. And I mean, sustainability budget's 2 minutes for this agenda item. So that tells you.
yeah,
It's just throwing things out for, earlier today, we talked about getting a presentation from so-and-so. Oh, yes, that's right. Let's put that on, the list.
Yeah.
I think it's a good practice.
yeah. I mean, I think that if all of the other committees in the city of Middleton want to no longer have this on their agenda, then that's their choice. But if other city committees are doing this, I think that it's important for us to consider doing it on a bi-monthly or quarterly basis. And not doing it, because if the city has issues from it, it would have come up at the airport committee, where it is also an item on the agenda.
Yeah, that's actually one I've noticed. And
Yeah.
why would we do this?
I spoke with Alder Lorman about it. He said that it has actually substantially improved things in his estimation. So I do feel strongly about this, and to be clear, as the chair, I do want this on the agenda. What I'm deferring here is the amount of time in between when we do them.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide that input from an
Yeah.
attorney perspective to
Sure.
say, whether somebody raises it here
Yeah,
and you say, yeah, let's put that on a future agenda. Or if somebody emails you and you say, hey, let's put that on a future agenda. I think his perspective was there's no way to discuss that latter event.
Mhm.
It can't be done.
okay. Yeah,
Charles, do you need a motion or?
we need a motion on frequency of this.
Okay.
So I still don't understand what you're trying to do here. Why can't if we have an agenda item, send it and it gets put on an agenda? I mean, I don't understand what.
I would like to have future suggestions for agenda items be raised in public. I think that, just from an inbox management standpoint, every single email that I get is a public record on my email. And in the interest of keeping public records off of my Gmail, and because I think that the things that we discuss should be discussed in the open, in public, this is far and away the easiest solution to both of those problems.
And this wouldn't preclude anyone from sending you an email and saying, oh, hey, sorry, this, but yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think this way, well, we lost our members of the public. They wouldn't chime in, but if something comes up like, oh, I want a demo of the Falca tool, residents, citizens who are paying attention and tuned in can email afterwards and be like, totally agree, that would be a great idea. Or, I don't see any problem in doing it. I think it's, like I said, I've seen it work really well for this.
So what you're saying is we bring it up at a meeting like this or just identify a future agenda item we'd like to see.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so just like, again, 2 minutes for sustainability at the end. Does anybody have ideas for a future agenda? And people will throw out ideas.
Quarterly.
And I want to be clear too, the lawyers specifically said there's little consequence if all that happens is people throw out ideas.
Yeah.
And
Right.
nothing happens with
Right.
that.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
But it doesn't get discussed at that point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion for quarterly,
We don't have a
I missed
motion.
that.
or no?
I just said it.
Oh, that's why I missed it.
You expressed a very
I was voting.
You move for quarterly
Yeah.
on a low agenda item. Okay.
Right.
It's 2 minutes.
Yeah. I can live with quarterly to try it out, and then if we decide, this is working out really well, we've noticed it's going beyond 2 minutes on a regular basis, then we can move it to bi-monthly or.
Then it'll be beyond 2 minutes bi-monthly, so it doesn't make any. It's just, that's like, yeah, there's no difference.
I'll second Carl's motion.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. I'm in favor.
Wait, I have one more discussion and then so we can't right now bring up ideas for next
Yeah.
time. So our next agenda or the one after that will have this as an agenda item.
Yeah.
Got it. Because the next one sounds like it's frighteningly long.
So the agenda
If
item
things
is
go
going to
okay.
be a quarterly. The agenda item is going to be future agenda items.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
topics.
I mean,
Topics for future consideration.
I mean,
There
you've
you
been
go.
doing this. I've been doing this for over 3 years now, and I don't think it's come up very often.
Yeah,
And quarterly, I think would be sufficient to start with.
And this will start at our second meeting in August, presumably.
no, it will not be, second meeting.
Yeah, yeah,
Second meeting.
yes.
First one is-
Yeah, I'd have to find.
We all want Carl and I
I
to
will
be
be
here.
out of town that week.
Huh?
I will be out of town that week, so I'd have to find a substitute.
And Don and I are
We
going to be
might not
gone the
have a
first
meeting
meeting.
in August,
Maybe there won't be an agenda that week.
right? Because, I mean,
All right, well,
yeah, we have a lot.
it's got the motion. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to schedule it now. That's correct. So. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All right, none opposed. Great, we'll do these quarterly. We have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And
Thanks, Brad.
thanks, Brad.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, Brad's still hanging in there.
Just in case you had another question.
we- Yeah.
I mean, if you're really, if you're hurt.